Chapter 1. It was a bright sunny day. The birds were chirping, the leaves were rustling, and the students in the academy in Konoha were silently chatting while one of the senseis was taking class. The markets had a few people roaming around shopping different kinds of things. The vendors shouted out the name of their goods and tried to reel in customers. The entire village was filled with life and sound. However, all these sounds were triumphed by the sounds coming from namely one place: the arena. The arena had various amounts of people ranging in it, ranging from a boisterous and loud kid to a decrepit old man drinking and laughing. However, all of their attention was towards the stage occupied by three. It was the first match of the final stage of the Chunin exams, and who better to be on stage than our favorite blonde gaki in a hideous orange jumpsuit that screamed for attention and a headband that had a leaf insignia. He was wearing his usual blue shinobi sandals. The 12-something-year-old teenager wearing it had a determined look, but with a smile of confidence. On opposite to him was a teenager who was nearly the same age as his. He had black long hair and was dressed in a white jacket and black shorts. He had the same headband as his opponent and was wearing black shinobi sandals. The unique thing about him, however, were his eyes that had no pupils. They were completely blind. If one didn't know, they would assume he was blind. He had a stoic face that said nothing about him. A true professional. The proctor, Genma, was standing between them, had a toothpick in his mouth, looking cool. He was wearing a bandana on his head and a green leaf jounin jacket. He said, "Are you both ready?" "I was born ready." "Yes, proctor." Genma nodded his head and said, "Let the first match begin." In the audience, "Huh, that blonde-haired kid is going to lose," said one of the spectators. "You said it. The kid is paired up with a Hyuga. No way he is going to win this one," said the second spectator. A pink-haired girl who had been near them bit her lip. Her light blonde-haired friend said to her, "Hey Sakura, come on. Don't be so glum. Aren't you at least going to cheer Naruto on?" Sakura, who heard that, had her face lightened. Her friend who saw that said, "That's more like it. Not like that the poor runt has a hope in hell against Niji." Sakura, who heard that, said, "He's not that bad, Ino." The now named Ino laughed and said, "Are you kidding? Not that bad. Is that the best you could do?" Away from them, the two rather well-known gate guard duo of Konoha talked among themselves. Who would have known that little squirt would survive this long? Yeah, he's been one lucky kid so far. The kid's luck is going to run out, though. He's about to face one of the Hyugas. Meanwhile, on the stage, the match had started and both opponents had yet to make a move. Both were calmly analyzing each other. Niji had adopted a stance while his opponent just stood there. Niji did not wait any longer and activated his Byakugan. He then began to closely move towards Naruto, trying to close the distance between them, one step at a time. Our blonde-haired gaki was just looking at him while standing there. He then decided to move by making a cross seal and shouted, "Multi-shadow clone jutsu." Immediately, 20 clones of the same teenager emerged in a plume of smoke and moved in to attack the Hyuga. Niji blocked all of their attacks one by one, dispatching the clones rather easily. His opponent, meanwhile, took some distance and tried to spring a surprise attack on Niji. However, Niji blocked off his attack and gave a counter immediately. Naruto then took some distance once again. He was gauging his opponent. Niji then said, "Is that the best you can do?" Naruto did not respond. He then performed the cross hand sign once again and created more shadow clones and launched them at Niji while he tried to catch the guy off guard. Niji then noticed that some of the clones had surrounded him. The original ordered the clones, now. The clones then threw kunai and shuriken at their opponent. "Got you now," said the original. Niji saw that he had no way to dodge or deflect all the attacks and thought, "Seems I need to use the technique quite early." He then took a stance and shouted, "8 trigram palm, rotation." Niji then started spinning at high speeds, forming a spherical dome. All the kunai and shuriken thrown at him were deflected by the dome. Naruto, who saw that, shouted, "What the hell was that?" In the audience, a man wearing a white hakama under his dark green jacket and with a young girl in black were sitting alongside each other. Both had the same white eyes as Niji. The young girl asked the man, "Father, isn't that dash?" "Rotation," said the father. He then thought, a skill only known to the members of the main branch. How did he learn it? Look at that, said the young girl, and the father who was brought out from his thoughts looked back at the match. On stage, Naruto was having a hard time against Neji. He was using all the tools in his arsenal, but none of them worked. Meanwhile, Neji was able to close the distance between him and Naruto. He then hit Naruto after shouting, 8 trigram palm, 64 palms, 8 palm, 16 palm, 32 palm, 64 palms. He continuously jabbed Naruto at all his chakra points, sealing off more than half of them. Naruto, who was having a hard time, spat out blood and then fell onto the ground. He then tried to get up. Neji, who saw that, said, "Give up. I have sealed more than half of your chakra points. You cannot win. You're lucky to be breathing." Naruto thought, "Come on, get up." He then slowly got up with pain evident on his face. He then said, "Oh yeah? Who said that?" "Destiny. You were destined to lose," responded Neji. "Sorry, but destiny could kiss my butt. I don't play by its rules. I am the one that sets up his own destiny." Neji, who heard that, said, "It is futile." Naruto then asked, "Why is it so? Why do you think that destiny is the one that controls us? You said the same shit to Hinata. What did she ever do wrong? Isn't she your cousin, for God's sakes?" Neji, who heard that, said, "You wouldn't understand." Naruto then said with determination ever present, "Then make me understand." Neji looked at him for a moment before he decided to remove his headband. On his forehead was a sealing jutsu shaped like a bird on it. Naruto, who saw that, asked, "What is that?" "It is a sealing jutsu that is applied on all branch members of the Hyuga clan by the main branch so that the branch members never go against the wish of the main family. If a branch member refuses to listen, then they will feel immense pain, which will ultimately kill them. There is only one way to free ourselves from this seal, and that's death." Naruto, who heard that, was shocked, but asked, "But why? Why would they do that?" Neji said, "To maintain the distinction between the two, but it was not just that. The seal had made sure that the Byakugan will not be accessed by our enemies after our deaths. It will automatically erase all evidence once the user has died." Naruto did not say anything while Neji continued his story. "The name of this sealing jutsu is called the Caged Bird Seal. It was applied to me when I was 4 years old, the day when Lady Hinata turned 3. There was a celebration within the family during that time, as Kumo had finally agreed to a peace treaty after years of skirmish and tensions between us. A delegation from Kumo had been sent to Konoha to participate in the celebration. However, that was a ruse. The ambassador they sent was there not to create a peace treaty, but to kidnap one of the main family members to discover the secrets of the Byakugan. It was Lady Hinata that was kidnapped. However, the ambassador's luck ran out when Lady Hinata's father, Lord Hayashi, confronted the Kumo ambassador and killed him. Neji then continued. Tensions were at an all-time high again, as Kumo had shamelessly asked retribution for their delegation's death, denying the kidnapping attempt altogether. They wished for the corpse of Lord Hayashi. However, the main family, who refused to hand over the secrets of the Byakugan, had decided to use a scapegoat. The scapegoat they used was my father, Hizashi, Lord Hayashi's younger twin brother. The main family killed my father and surrendered his corpse to Kumo while using the Caged Bird Seal to remove the Byakugan after his death. Kumo accepted the corpse and war was prevented. Neji then tied his headband again and said, "You want to know why I said that destiny controls us? That's why. We are nothing but caged birds." Naruto, who remained silent all this time, said, "I get that what happened to your father is wrong, and the whole main family branch family distinction among members of the same family is wrong. But what has Hinata got to do with this? Did she ask to be kidnapped? Is she not your family?" Neji then said, "Like I said before, she's a failure because she is destined to be one. She will always be a failure, just like you." And to rub salt on his wounds, Neji then added, "And what do you know about familial ties? You're nothing but a clanless orphan. You don't know what it feels like to lose your family." Naruto, who heard that, turned silent. Some of the audience who heard that snickered as they downright hated Naruto's guts. Neji then said, "It seems you finally accept your loss." He then moved away from Naruto and walked toward the exit. Gamma was about to call off the match when he saw that Naruto stopped him with his hand. He said, Don't call off the match yet. Niji, who heard that, turned back and said, You still haven't given up? Are you that willing to die so early? Naruto said, You're wrong. Niji, who heard that, looked confused. Question mark. Naruto said, You were not wrong when you said that I don't know what it feels like to have a family. Truthfully, I don't. The closest thing I ever had to a family is that old geezer who is sitting on that seat smoking his pipe beside his fellow Kage. Aside from him, the only ones that ever came close are the Ichiraku family and Irika-sensei. However, you were wrong on one part. I may be an orphan, but I am not clanless. I did have a family, and I do have a clan. Niji turned amused. Is that so? Nevertheless, you are going to lose here. Naruto did not say anything, but all of a sudden Niji saw thin golden-hued wires coming out of his hands. Niji shouted out loud, What is that? In the audience, the Hokage who saw that turned surprised. He thought, It can't be. How? How come I don't know about this? The Kazekage who saw that did not show any sort of reaction, but one can detect a minute amount of surprise and amusement from his face. Ino, who saw that, asked, Sakura, what did Naruto do? Why are wires coming out of his body? Sakura said, I don't know. On stage, Niji had been surrounded by the wires that caught him quite easily, preventing any sort of movement. They pierced his skin at certain areas and made him unable to move. He tried to turn around, but couldn't do so. He said, What are these wires made of? Naruto, who heard that, said, Nice, aren't they? They are a slight divergence from my clan's bloodline ability. Usually they are chains instead of wires, but hey, you get what you get. Niji tried to move around and tried to cut the wires, but Naruto said, It's useless. Those wires are made to seal away and subdue chakra. Even a tailed beast would find it difficult to break through once it has been caught. Niji then noticed something. These wires, they are absorbing my chakra. Naruto said, It seems you noticed. The wires also have a passive ability to absorb chakra from whatever it touches and use it to maintain itself. Once a shinobi is caught by it, he will be incapacitated. Niji was silent for a few moments and then asked, Why? Naruto had a bewildered and yet amused expression on his face. Question mark. Niji then asked, If you had such a trump card, then why didn't you use it beforehand? Naruto, who heard that, said, Well, truth is I didn't want to reveal my skills that easily, especially to my enemies in the future. After all, the first rule of being a shinobi is deception. Second point being that I never planned to reveal my skills in this match, and just when using my current skills somehow to save energy, but you just had to pull the clanless card on me. It did make me quite angry. Naruto then continued, Though I do intend to thank you. I have been working on something for a while, and I had hit a dead end. I needed some help in locating some of my chakra points, as chakra control ain't my strong suit. It took you hitting me with your 64 palms, but I at least got the locations of those 64 points. It was simply a hassle to locate them using a textbook when it just mentions the general area and not the precise location. Naruto then replicated what Niji did and poked his chakra points once again like Niji did in that exact same order with his fingers and removed the effects of the ceiling. He then let out a reinvigorated sigh and said, Yosh, now I can finally move properly again. Niji, who saw what Naruto did, was stunned. He thought he was able to unseal all 64 of his chakra points that I sealed after seeing me use my technique only once. Impossible. Niji then asked, Who the hell are you? Naruto gave a fox-like grin and said, I am Naruto Uzumaki, 69th clan head of the Uzumaki, and a shinobi of Kanagakur no Sato. Chapter 2. 7 years after the Kyuubi attack. It was a celebratory evening in Konoha. People were gathering up on the streets, selling food and drinking in the bars, while some went by the graveyard to visit their dead relatives and martyrs who died in the Kyuubi attack. After all, this was all the Kyuubi festival was about. It was a remembrance of the event that happened 7 years ago, where the 4th Hokage decided to sacrifice himself for the village by killing the Kyuubi, as per what the younger generation knows. However, the older generation knew better. They knew that the Kyuubi was not killed, but rather sealed by their beloved 4th Hokage. They knew that it was sealed and was a young boy. Some of the more rowdy ones who were drunk decided to capture the boy and kill him, spouting, finish what the fourth started, or some shit like that. Evidently, even though they knew that the QB was sealed, their lack of sealing knowledge and its aspects made them assume that the boy was the QB and not its host. It did not play well in the boy's favor. Though the boy in question was nowhere to be seen in the village, and their search ended to be futile. Naruto was outside the village going about doing his own thing while hiding away from the villagers. He was kicked out of the orphanage when he learned to walk and talk on his own. He had been living in the woods for a while, but he met an old man who he later found out was the Hokage. With that said, the old man, aka Hokage, found him while he was fishing and decided to give his own apartment. Naruto, who got his own place, hugged the laughing grandfatherly man and lived there. That was 2 years ago. Naruto has always been perceptive. He knew that the villagers were angry at him for some reason, but he didn't know why. They always cursed at him behind his back as demon, wretch, or a few other words that Naruto didn't want to remember. He also noted that the villagers were particularly more cranky at him during the QB festival / his birthday and targeted him, as evidenced by the last time they chased him. Luckily, he was able to give them the slip by crawling through one of the holes in a fence and unknowingly to him. Some of the Umbu captured those who chased after him and were shown a good time with Ibiki. However, like I said, that was not known to him. So this time Naruto decided to not risk a chase once again and left the village for the woods. He came out and was walking near the outskirts. He went by the river to do some fishing and caught a couple of them. He found some herbs in the forest and added them onto the fish before grilling all of them together. The fish tasted wonderful to Naruto, who had an empty belly. Once that was done, he decided to sleep under one of the hollowed-out trees that he had made just in case. However, fortune was not on his side at that time, as the hollowed tree had become home to a boar as Naruto saw twigs and tracks left by it. Naruto silently began to walk away looking for shelter. To further mock him, fate decided to make it rain on that day. Naruto thought, why does it have to rain now of all times? He then went out looking for a place to avoid the rain and moved from place to place until he spotted an abandoned building in the distance. Naruto noticed that it was some kind of shrine and went towards the place. He saw that the shrine had a big spiral symbol on its front and was curious now as he had seen the same symbol on some of his clothes. However, the rain made him unable to stay outside for long. He took a step inside to find a moderately empty and large room. However, his attention was garnered by one of the details of the room that was the masks present on the wall of the room with black flames licking the bottom. Naruto thought, creepy. I don't want to be here. I need to leave. However, looking at the rain outside, Naruto was perplexed. He sighed and thought, all right, once the rain gives up, I will leave. However, the rain didn't seem to be giving up anytime soon. Naruto sighed and just looked around the room while shivering in the cold. He noticed some candles, but he didn't have a matchstick, so he warmed himself with his hands. He then stepped on a spot in the corner and found that there was a weird creaking sound from one of the floorboards. Naruto looked at the floor. He had a suspicion he wanted to check out. He decided to tap on the floor once. He found that the noise came again. He now tapped on a different spot. The noise was different. Naruto immediately understood that there was something beneath the floorboards and removed them. He found a small passage with the stairs that led him underground. Something told Naruto not to go in, but the childlike curiosity had gotten the better of him. He thought, maybe there's treasure inside. He liked the prospect of a treasure hunt, which boosted his morale and willingness to go inside. He went down the stairs. The stairs seemed never-ending. However, the most unusual thing about it all was whenever he stepped down on a light would eerily glow blue, highlighting the path. It sure was convenient for him, and thus he didn't complain. I wonder what is at the end of this passage. His curiosity was satisfied once he noted that the stairs had ended. He then came onto a big chamber. Once he stepped in, the whole room was illuminated with the same bright light, but much more intensified that Naruto could see everything clearly, as if it was as clear as day. Not only that, he could unusually breathe warm, fresh air. There wasn't the usual staleness present in an underground room that has been abandoned for so long. The floor was spotlessly clean with stone tiles in place. The place looked nothing like the one on top in both size and maintenance. He saw that the whole place was filled with stuff and was excited to find what it was. He then removed his clothes to allow them to dry up for some time and looked around. He found a row of books neatly arranged on the shelves. And there were a lot of shelves. He took out some of the books and was able to make out some characters in the books, but not completely. However, he was able to recognize some of the symbols near the characters. It was the symbols of the noble clans of Konoha. Naruto figured that he had snooped around the bookshelf enough and decided to leave everything in place unless the owner suddenly came back to find it in a mess. He saw various scrolls in the room aside from the books and some weapons on a rack. He fooled around with some of them, but accidentally cut himself with one. He shouted, "Ita!" The weapons were still sharp. He figured that he had fooled around enough after that and kept the ninja tools in their respective places where he found them. It also had been a while since he came here, and he thought that his clothes would be dried enough, and sure they were. He wore his clothes again before he considered leaving, but his curiosity was still not satisfied, and he decided to stay for a little while longer. He thought. Besides, the rain was heavy. It wouldn't have let up anytime soon. His attention was then turned to the center of the room. He found out that there was a huge red spiral about 12 meters in diameter. He was drawn to the red spiral. He remembered that the front of the temple and his clothes had the same red spiral as the ones present on the all and wondered what they meant. Thus he went towards it. He then looked at it for a while. His attention was then drawn to the center of the red spiral, where there was a small hole. He wanted to check out what it was about, and thus kept his ring finger inside it to find a switch of some kind. It was then the magic happened. The whole room was encapsulated in blue lines with various kanji written on it. He then felt the room tremble. Naruto thought, "Oh no, now I have done it." The room trembled a bit more before Naruto decided to hightail out of there. He tried to take his finger out, but he couldn't. He pulled and pulled, but could not do so. He then watched as the room went down with along the diameter of the spiral. He was that as he went down the outer edges formed stairs to climb, slowly forming a spiral staircase. He relaxed at the prospect of a way out and watched in amazement at the entire spectacle. Naruto was sure that they were really too deep. This time it was getting slightly difficult for him to breathe. The entire thing moved down for another 20 meters into the ground before it came to a stop. The spiral finally let go of his finger. Naruto felt relief at that. This time he saw a passage leading to another path. He thought, well, that's enough surprises for one day. He then moved towards the staircase, but looking at the passage, Naruto could not help but feel a tad bit curious to finish this through and through. He thought that, well, I have come along this far, why not just a bit more? He then sighed and went toward the passage. This time he went inside. This time, however, instead of lights, there were candles on the way that gave an eerie blue flame. Naruto gulped as he moved forward. He heard the sound of water flowing like a river. He went further inside the passage to find a rather large cavern. An underground waterfall was flowing on the edges of the cavern. Naruto saw that the passage turned into a bridge. He then saw that there was a huge circular ring in the middle. Naruto approached the ring. He then saw that there was an object in the middle of the ring. Naruto went towards it and found out that it was covered in cloth and sealed with a red string. Naruto slowly removed the red string. The cavern trembled again, but Naruto was more interested in what lay before him. He unraveled the cloth and found out it was a pair of tambos, short staff. The tambos looked metallic silver in color with some sleek designs of spirals on it. Naruto also noticed some unusual gaps at the edge of the tambos. It looked like it was missing a blade or some component. While he was busy analyzing the tambo, Naruto did not notice a person standing behind him, looking at all of his actions. It seems that someone has finally found this place. Oh, and it seems you are also with him, Kurama. Garaha! Naruto screamed and fell on the floor. He then saw that it was a man who was behind him. Naruto saw that the man had shaggy brown hair and brown eyes. He wore a white robe just like the man in the statue. The man also had wrinkles and a short beard. Who are you? And why did you scare me like that? Said Naruto, pointing out his finger at the unknown man. The man rubbed his head and gave a wry smile. He said, sorry if I scared you, young one, but I just couldn't help it. Naruto calmed down and asked, who are you, mister? When did you come here? The man replied, my name is Azura Otsutsuki. As to why I am here, well, I have always been here. When Naruto heard that the man has always been here, he thought that this man must be the owner of the place. He was terrified immediately at the prospect of the man punishing him for trespassing. He immediately said, I am sorry. I didn't mean to snoop around. I just got curious. I didn't take anything. Azura, who heard that, was silent for a moment and then laughed at the boy. He said, "Why are you apologizing, boy? I didn't accuse you for stealing, did I? Besides, you're an Uzumaki and a part of my family." Naruto, who heard that bit, was confused. Family? I am sorry, Aji-san, but you have the wrong person. My name is Naruto, and I am an orphan, sir. Azura, who heard that, said, "Orphan? Strange. This place can only be accessed by an Uzumaki." He then looked at Naruto closely and said, "Kurama? What is going on? Wait, why you are inside this boy in the first place?" Naruto did not know why, but he was then in a different place. This place looked more like a sewer, and there was a huge gate in front of them. Naruto felt terrified at the sudden transportation and was more confused. His only support was the warmth given by the man called Azura. "It has been a while, Azura." "Yes, it has, though I am more of a thought projection than a living person." Naruto then noticed the source of the voice. He saw a huge fox with orange fur and waving 9 tails. He then remembered the tale of the demon that attacked the village 7 years ago. "Kyubi." Azura did not say anything and just looked at the Kyubi. He asked, "What happened, old friend? You have a lot of nerve to ask what happened after what your and that bastard Indra's descendants did to me, especially your brother's previous incarnation. So they have found you and are using you as weapons now." "Yes. Forgive me. I am not looking for any apologies," said Kurama. He then looked at Naruto and then added further, "However, I am more annoyed that you are coming here with that brat." "Well, I have no choice in the matter. It is young Naruto's mind." "Humph." Naruto was even more confused. He said, "Wait, where are we? What do you mean by my mind?" The Kyubi, aka Kurama, just snorted. Azura took to explaining the young boy what it was. He said, "We are in your mind, young one. This is just the physical representation of your mind." Naruto then added, "Then why is the Kyubi here in my mind?" Azura responded, "That is because he exists within you. He has been sealed within you." Naruto, who heard that secret, was shocked thoroughly. He then thought to the time that the villagers had called him demon, scum, and all those words that hurt him to the core. He then said with a depressed and sad voice, "Then the villagers were right. I am a demon. Don't misunderstand what those idiots in your village tell you, boy. I am I and you are you. We are different. I am sealed within you. I am not you. Don't even dare think that you could compare yourself to me." The impudence. Azura, who heard that, gave a wry smile and said, "It is exactly as Kurama said. He is only sealed within you. You are just his prison." Naruto understood what it was that Azura said. He then asked, "So what are we doing here? And why is the Kyubi sealed within me?" Azura then replied, "Yes, I have the same question as Naruto. Kurama, can you tell me why?" The Kyubi sighed and said, "I see no harm in telling you." He then turned towards Azura and said, "The battle between the various clans that you had started after you fought with your brother for the right to inherit the old man's place had continued on for centuries. The teachings father gave, Ninshu, had been twisted to use it as a weapon to harm others instead of understanding them, and thus became ninjutsu. It wasn't until a century ago that a descendant of yours put a stop to it by making a temporary peace between yours and your brother's descendants. They are now known as the Senju and the Uchiha. So that means the feud between us is over. That's great news." "Listen completely before speaking, dumb brat," shouted the Kyubi. Azura then scratched his face and said, "Sorry?" Kurama just outright ignored him and said, "As I was saying, your descendant Hashirama Senju made a truce with Indra's descendant, Madara Uchiha. They created the hidden village system together, where multiple clans joined together to live in peace and harmony. And many other clans did join. The village they created came to be known as Kanahegakure no Sato. Many other clans who had the same idea had formed villages of their own. However, that peace was only temporary. Madara Uchiha had given in to the curse just like his ancestor. He grew mad with power and then went on to control me with his damned visual prowess and attacked the village. Hashirama Senju killed him to protect the village and moved on with his life until the end of his days managing the village, the one where we are beneath." Naruto, who had been silent until now, then asked, "That doesn't explain why you are here." Kurama nodded and said, "During their battle, The wife of Hashirama Senju, Mito Uzumaki, decided to help her husband fight Madara by sealing me within herself using their famed Fuinjutsu. She had since become the first Jinchuriki aside from the old man. Azura nodded his head. I see. The Uzumaki had a rather strong life force, and thus they were able to seal beings like you within themselves. Kurama then continued on. We were later captured by Hashirama Senju to be sealed away within the humans so that it may help prevent war between the various hidden villages. Unsurprisingly, that didn't work. 3 great wars had happened, and now here we are, finding myself in a new host. Naruto then said, Wait, if you were already within someone else, then how did you come out to attack the village 7 years ago? Wait, why did you attack the village in the first place? Kurama shouted at Naruto, Shut up! You and those idiotic villagers are nothing but worm food in my eyes. Why do you think I find the need to attack such a pitiful village in the first place? If it weren't for that blasted Uchiha with those cursed eyes, dash. Azura shouted, Enough, Kurama. You have made your point. Kurama became silent at that, but still snorted, Humph. Naruto, who heard that now, was even more confused. He had more questions than answers now, but seeing the stern look on Azura's face made him shut up and tremble in fear. Azura, who looked at the boy, sighed and said, Look, Naruto-kun, I am just trying to help you. I wanted to know what had happened in my absence. Can you stay silent for a while until I figure out what's going on? Naruto, who heard that, nodded his head and gave a weak yes. Azura then asked, So then, Kurama, why is Naruto-kun an orphan? What happened to the Uzumaki clan? Kurama said, Those pathetic weaklings died in the Second Great War. Unlike the Senju and the Uchiha, their clan did not join the Hidden Leaf Village and were targeted by some of the other villages for their power. Long story short, the clan is history with only a few of its members escaping their island. One of those is my previous host who came to this village to be Mito's successor to play the role of a Jinchuriki. Azura then said, Then why aren't you within her, but rather in young Naruto? I think I can answer that question for you, Azura-san. Naruto then saw a new face among them. He looked a lot like Naruto with cerulean blue eyes and shaggy yellow-blonde hair. He was wearing a white coat and a blue turtleneck t-shirt underneath and shinobi blue pants. The Kyuubi who saw who came was agitated more than ever before. It shouted, Yondaime. It has been a while, Kyuubi. Come here. I am going to gut you with these claws of mine for putting me in this cage. The Kyuubi was growling with rage so much that before Azura put another word in, he heard the 4th Hokage say, Why don't we take this conversation elsewhere? Sometime later, Naruto had come out to the outside world and was contemplating all the things he had just heard. Azura was behind him. He then turned toward Azura and said, Thank you. Azura, who heard that, asked, What for? Naruto gave him a megawatt smile and said, For giving me the chance to meet my father. Azura, who heard that, gave a smile of his own and said, You're very welcome. Naruto then asked, So why are you here, Azura Aji-san? Azura then said to Naruto, I am here because I have a message to deliver. Naruto then said, All right, what is it? Do you need me to do something? Azura said with concern in his voice, Are you sure you are ready to hear this? You have been thrust with a lot of new things just now, and it may take some time for you to accept dash. Naruto said with a smile, It's all right, Azura Aji-san. It's hard, but that conversation with my father helped me find something. Azura asked curiously, What did you find? Naruto said, My identity. Azura, who heard that, understood what Naruto was talking about. He thought, The boy is strong, and nodded his head. He then said to Naruto, All right then, listen, it's going to take a while. The next morning, Naruto was in the outskirts of the village. He was walking towards the village after a while to get some food into his system. On his way, he thought about the many things that Azura had said to him, but only one of those things stayed in his mind more than all others. Flashback. I need to become strong. Azura said, Yes, as you are, you will not be enough to fulfill the prophecy or carry on the legacy of my wife's clan, the Uzumakis. The clan is older than even my father. Naruto then remembered something and asked, So wait, the Uzumaki clan is older than this Sage of Six Paths? Then doesn't that make them older than ninjutsu? Naruto did get some of the details, the QB said. One thing he possessed from a young age was a good memory and a sharp mind. It was the only thing aside from his appearance that he inherited from his father. Azura smiled and said, "Yes, the Uzumaki are a very old clan. It was the clan of my wife. I was first surprised to find out that they possessed the thing you called chakra, as only those who apprenticed under my father had them. However, they did not have the ability to use it properly. Though the clan itself was very old and held many secrets, much had been erased by the sands of time and the fires of war. The only thing the head of the clan remembered was that they were descendants of the old gods. What they were or who they are is unknown. We don't even know what became of them." Azura then continued, "We left that be. My sons were born, and one of them was able to unlock some of the abilities I didn't possess. The manifestation of chakra as weapons. I read through the old scrolls, and it seemed to be the gift given to the Uzumaki clan by the old gods. Thus I decided to allow my son to inherit his mother's name and continue on her line." Naruto still remained silent, and Azura continued further. "It was then in my later years that my wife saw something. She said that it was a prophecy and asked to seal a part of my soul here as a thought projection in that tomboy you hold until the day comes when the one shall arrive to open the place." Naruto now had a dry look. He was really bored with all the explanation. However, Azura continued. "She said that the one who arrives will be the one to carry out the prophecy." Naruto said, "You say all that, but what is this secret? This prop something?" Azura smiled. He knew that Naruto was still a child and that he could not understand a lot of things that he is saying. He said to him in a gentle voice, "You won't understand it now, Naruto, but you will when you are older. So I want you to remember these words and keep them to your heart." Naruto then looked at Azura, who said the words. The time dash. Back to present. The time will come when the world will face a big tribulation. Only the one who carries our blood and the blood of our enemies be the one to put a stop to it. The one shall bring either great destruction or great prosperity. Naruto still didn't understand what that meant. He just knew that it was some kind of mumbo-jumbo that the old people like to spew in their free time. But that did not bother him right now. Right now, his mind was on the fact that he had to become strong some way somehow, so that he could properly protect the ones he will hold precious to him. He looked at the gates and thought, "My father and mother gave everything to protect this village, and all it ever gave back was disrespect and dishonor to their memory." Naruto's mind was filled with hate at the thought of the treatment the village gave him. Then his thoughts went to the third Hokage and the Ichiraku family that had been kind to him, and that hate subsided. "It doesn't matter now. I can't forget what they did to me, nor I ever will, but I will forgive them because my parents hold this place dear. I will fight to honor their memory and not let their sacrifice be in vain, even if this damned village doesn't recognize that." He then thought of the time he spent along with the third Hokage. Flashback. What is the Hokage, Ji-chan? Naruto and Sarutobi were by the river fishing in the night. They were all alone with only the stars and themselves to accompany them. Sarutobi smiled at the question of the adorable 5-year-old and answered, "The Hokage is the leader of this village, Naruto-kun. He helps protect this village from the shadows and is respected and admired by all those around him." "He is admired?" asked a curious Naruto. Sarutobi nodded his head and said, "Yes, Naruto-kun." Naruto then looked at the ground and was pondering something. He then looked at the third Hokage and gave him a full megawatt smile. He said, "I have made my decision." Naruto then said, "I am going to become Hokage. Then nobody in this village will hate me and scorn me like they do now." Sarutobi, who heard the answer, was stunned. He then looked at Naruto for a moment before he started laughing. Naruto, who looked at that, said, "Hey, what's the big idea, old man? Why are you laughing? I will become Hokage." Sarutobi, who looked at him, chuckled and said, "Sorry, Naruto-kun. I just couldn't help but laugh at the way you said that as you reminded me of someone. You will become a fine Hokage." Naruto, who heard that, smiled and said, "Believe it. Indeed, the will of fire grows strongly within you." Naruto asked, "The will of fire?" Sarutobi said, "When tree leaves dance, one shall find flames. The fire's shadow shall illuminate the village, and once again, tree leaves shall bud anew. Naruto was still a 6-year-old and could not understand what Sarutobi had said. He had a confused and bewildered expression. However, there was some amount of curiousness in it. I don't understand what you said. Sarutobi, who heard that, smiled and said, the time will come when you do, Naruto-kun. Ah, come on, tell me, Ji-chan. Ha 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 ha. Back to present. Naruto smiled at the fond memory and said, I think I finally understand, Aji-chan. His will renewed and his heart still burning with newborn determination to his already existing goals. Like my father before me, I will become Hokage. Chapter 3. Naruto went inside the village after learning a lot of things about himself. He moved towards his apartment in the East District. Good thing about the place is that he is the only one that lives in the building other than the owner. The landlord was a guy that tolerated Naruto as long as he had paid the rent on time and wasn't being a nuisance. Naruto went on to sleep in his bed thinking about what happened. He was already on his way to train himself so that he could become strong. He was reading the various books he found in the shrine before. However, having the books is one thing, but reading and understanding all of them was another. Some of the books in the shrine were a little more advanced. Unlike what people thought of him, he was smart. He knew that chakra was essential in using jutsu, but he did not know what it was or how it can be manipulated. So his immediate goal right now was to learn how to use chakra properly, and he figured that the books that the teachers used in class would be a good start and thought of obtaining them. Now the question came on how to do that, because he can neither access the library nor depend on a teacher from school. The librarian had always been a thorn on Naruto's behind, as she had refused him any form of access to the resource. The same can be said to his teachers, who seemed to rather enjoy mocking him than teaching anything at all. Thus, Naruto had two options left if he wanted to further himself. Either he needs to ask the Hokage's permission to use the library, or he can sneak inside and steal the books. The first option may seem without any risks, but Naruto knew otherwise. The Hokage was a keen individual and would wonder why Naruto was so eager to learn all of a sudden and would surely follow him. Naruto knew he couldn't risk that, not after what Azura said to him. Flashback. Naruto-kun, I want you to listen carefully. Do not ever divulge of what you learned here today, said Azura in a rather grave manner. Naruto, being the curious mind he is, asked, why? Azura said, this matter concerns you and only you. A lot that has been said here concerns the true nature of the world. The information you have is very crucial. Those must be held secret so that you are not put in danger from anyone. At least not until you are strong enough to hold out on your own. Naruto asked, so I should not tell anyone? Azura said, not even the ones that are close to you. Naruto immediately thought of the face of the Hokage. He then thought for a while before nodding his head. Back to present. So Naruto had only one more option left. He thought, stealing it is. He then went towards the library. On his way to the library, he crossed a park where he saw a girl sitting alone on the swing, looking distant and lonely. He recognized the girl. He thought, that girl, she was the one that was bullied before, wasn't she? I wonder why she is alone. He then looked at the girl still swinging and thought of approaching her. However, the logical side of him argued that he had things to do and places to be and no time to worry about the girl. Strangely, his mind agreed with that logic. He then started to walk away but stopped midway. He sighed and thought, oh well, this can wait for some time. He then went towards the girl, who was still in her own thoughts, and said to her, hey, what are you doing all alone? Hinata was in her own thoughts, thinking about her father's words earlier on after her defeat against her little sister. Mini flashback. You are weak, Hinata. I am very disappointed in you. The Hyuga clan cannot tolerate weakness. I cannot make you the heiress if you are this weak, said the Hyuga clan head. Back to present. Hinata was thinking, maybe my father was right all along. Maybe I am just weak and I am always meant to be weak. Hey, Kaya. Hinata was then suddenly brought back from her thoughts when a boy her age stood in front of her and shouted at her. She was scared of the boy all of a sudden and was trembling in reflex. Naruto noticed that he had startled the girl and gave a wry smile. He rubbed the back of his head and said, I am sorry I scared you like that, but I just wanted to ask you why you are here all alone. Hinata, who was brought out of her thoughts, finally looked at who it was that interrupted her line of thinking. She saw that it was Naruto and recognized him. It's that boy. He was the one that saved me from those mean kids on the first day in the academy. Hinata remembered the incident as clear as crystal. She remembered when the bullies led her off away from the public eyes and into the woods under the guise of playing before they started to hit her. He came to her rescue to beat those bullies, but instead got beaten himself. However, even if he got beat up, she still admired his courage to stand up to those bullies that she wished that she had that form of confidence in herself. Hinata was slightly interested in Naruto from then on. She observed Naruto during their classes and saw that he always held himself with confidence. She did not know him that well, as it had only been 2 weeks since they started the academy together. However, her wonder of where Naruto gets his confidence to say the things he did and do the stuff he does still lingered on her mind almost every day in these 2 weeks. It was then she saw that Naruto was awkwardly waiting for an answer from her that she said in a quick and flustered manner. It's no P problem in Naruto-kun. Naruto looked curious. He asked, "You recognize me?" Hinata said, "Why yes. WEARR and TT the S same class." Naruto awkwardly rubbed his head and said, "Oh gee, are we? I am sorry I didn't recognize you." Hinata shook her head and was waving her hand frantically. She said in a hurry, It's no P problem. I always had a W-weak presence." Naruto and Hinata were quiet for a few moments before Naruto asked, "So why are you here?" Hinata, who heard that, told Naruto of the events that took place. She then said, "Am I a failure?" Naruto said, "Yes, you are." Hinata, who heard that, was not surprised anymore. But what she heard next was something that completely changed her perception of the world. However, that doesn't mean that you can't succeed in the future. She turned her head towards Naruto, who smiled and said, "Never give up and give it your best. Work hard, and someday no one will ever say you are a failure. Prove what those people are saying to be wrong." Hinata, who saw Naruto smile, gave a smile of her own. She found Naruto's words to be encouraging, and she gave a nod. Naruto said, "Well, I have to get going now. We will do our best to achieve our goals. Won't we, Hinata?" Hinata gave a very weak, "Why, yes." Naruto gave a smile and then said, "See ya." Naruto ignited the spark in Hinata to work and hard and never give up. However, little did Naruto know that he also ignited the spark of a different kind in her. The spark that ignited the flames of a creepy stalker inside Hinata who would follow her Naruto-kun whenever she gets the chance. Naruto did not know why, but all of a sudden, he seemed to be getting chilly. He thought, "That's strange, but whatever, better get moving." Sometime later, evening. Naruto later arrived at the library. This was a daring thing to do for him. He did a few pranks here and there, but never committed a theft before, especially a library. He figured that it would be easy because the books he was looking for must be in the general shinobi section and not in the restricted ones. He was silently scoping out the area to find any entrances into the library. He searched around the building and finally noticed an air vent at the top coming out from the building. The vent was small for an adult, but at the right size for him if he could squeeze in. However, the vent was at a height that he could not reach even if he jumped. He then saw a trash bin nearby and grinned. Using the trash bin, he compensated for the height difference and then entered the vent. He crawled inside the dusty vent and tried to make less noise as possible. He searched for an exit and finally found one. However, once he came out, Naruto noticed that he was in the place he wanted to be. He grinned and then moved on to get the books he was looking for. He found the titles as Chakra Control for Rookies, some basic concepts of jutsu, hand signs, and their importance. Naruto figured that since he was borrowing these books, he might as well do it so that he doesn't need to come back here again for a while. He also noticed that there were some other books in the area that taught about advanced chakra control and some basic medical ninjutsu. So he took those books too. He brought all the books he had and stuffed them into a bag and was about to get away from the library when a dust particle entered his nose and made him sneeze. He heard a sound. "Who's there?" Naruto then saw that the librarian who was making her rounds coming near his position. He hurriedly entered the vent and closed the vent door. He quickly made his way out of the vent and found himself outside and ran away from the place. Once he figured that the coast was clear, he left the place to go back to his home. Naruto went back to his home and immediately jumped into the books he just borrowed. He started reading each and every one of them with much interest. Chakra is the inherent form of energy present in every human being. It is a combination of one's physical energy and spiritual energy. Its flow within the body can be manipulated using various hand seals. Naruto read all night until he was tired. He figured that he will not go to the academy the next day anyway, as the teachers did not bother to teach him anything of importance, and besides, the only training they got was physical training. They still haven't gotten to the basics of chakra manipulation. All they were learning for now was just theory, and Naruto figured that he can learn those things on his own. Thus, Naruto had begun his first step in training himself. He started to train his body whenever he can by running and exercising. Weights training was still a no-go, as he figured that it would affect his stature. He was already short as it is and didn't want to do anything that would impede his growth any further. He made sure that even if he did train, it was only in and around the Uzumaki shrine. He understood that the third Hokage always kept tabs on the village through his crystal ball when he accidentally found out that the old pervert was peeking on the women's bath using that. Thus, he came outside the village's boundaries where he was sure that the ball's range won't reach him before he started any form of training. With regards to his diet, Naruto was eating more nutritious food. However, the problem was that he didn't cut down his ramen, but rather increased it. Tucci and Ayam were surprised by the amount the little guy ate and wondered where all the food went. They often thought whether his stomach was the abyss itself, as Naruto always said. "I always have more space for ramen." They figured that he was a growing boy and he must need the energy, but it was still unhealthy to eat that much salty food. Thus, they experimented for his sake and made some changes in the recipe so that it can be nutritious for the growing boy. And just like that, time flew by. 1 year later. 1 year had passed, and Naruto was 8 years old. He had been improving on in his basics the entire year and used the books he got from the library. He also visited by the Uzumaki shrine whenever he could and trained there. The place was in the outskirts of the village, and people hardly came by that place, so Naruto could let loose with his techniques in the area. He had been training in ninjutsu and chakra control. He found out that he had affinity for wind and water from the chakra paper he had got from a store. Using henge to transform into a person and buying stuff had become rather easy. He has now a degree of mastery over the basic ninjutsu, including the 3 taught at the academy. The ones that required work, however, were shuriken jutsu and jinjutsu, as he had found that he lacked talent in them. He also had researched some medical ninjutsu, but did not get deep into the practical applications of the subject. Instead, this was the only time he worked on theory so that he can better understand the human body and its weakness. He figured that if he took the graduation test, then he would pass the exam with flying colors. However, he decided to vote against it because he did not want attention right now. He had a constant reminder of Ajura's warning and made any and all attempts to make him look more like a troublesome fool than an intelligent kid to get the busy-bodied Hokage and his gang of shinobi off his back, who kept tabs on him 2 months after he started training. However, that did not mean that he was clear of all suspicion. The Hokage still took his time to assign someone to watch over Naruto constantly, until a month ago when he noticed that no one was following him anymore. So Naruto thought that he was off the hook, but the Hokage had summoned him one day and asked about what he had been doing all the time. Naruto was somehow able to spin a story that he was just training secretly so that he can quickly become Hokage. While it was not the truth, it was still a half-truth. One half-truth that convinced the Hokage that it was Naruto. He then asked Naruto if he wanted any help from him. Naruto gave a response that all suspicions that Hiruzen held was thrown away from his mind. He said, "No thanks, Gigi. What do you think, an old-timer like you can teach me anyways? Why you dash?" And thus ended the short episode between the two. Naruto loved Sarutobi like a grandfather and looked up to him, but he was thorough in keeping his secret, even his strengths. Right now, though, Naruto was going through some of the books in the chamber underneath the masked shrine. He saw that nearly all the books there were on sealing techniques. He had been curious about it in the beginning, but that curiosity went away when he found out that he could not understand any of them. It was not that it was too complex or something of the sort. Even if it was, Naruto was able to understand the principles. It was that the practice of fuinjutsu required a proper handwriting. A single different stroke with the brush can make a lot of variations. Naruto was weak at it as the 8-year-old was still learning to write the characters properly and had so far made no progress. He understood that the art required a teacher and thus had put a lid on it and kept it aside for later. So aside from the books on the sealing arts, the shelves also contained information on the various clans around the world. It was a hidden gold mine for Naruto. He had learnt some of the weaknesses in a way to counter some techniques of some famed clans, including all the ones in Konoha. Seems as if the Uzumaki had made it a personal duty to collect and store all sorts of information. There were also some books written there by his mother. They were the first books he ever read. He finally found out the full details of what happened at Uzumaki. He was a bit sad about the whole thing, but he decided to honor whatever that was left of them. Naruto memorized whatever information he found. Anyway, coming back on topic, Naruto snooped through the contents of the books when he got bored off it. He decided to take a break and went to the shrine above. He resealed the wooden floor and came outside to find it was dark. Naruto had decided to stay there before heading back to his home in the morning. He went inside and rested in a sleeping bag in one of the corners. Naruto had come to call the place a home away from home. He thought that it would be a good idea to clean up the place as best as he could. He could not do anything advanced like repairing the doors, but the interior was much cleaner once he got rid of the dust and the rats infesting the masked shrine. Speaking of the masks, Naruto looked at the bunch of masks hanging on the wall. He remembered the time Azura had explained what those masks were to him. Flashback. Those masks you saw above is something that my wife's family protected. Each of those masks there are used as a medium to invoke the Shinigami if a user decides to wear it, said Azura. SS Shinigami. Azura nodded grimly, the one and only. So don't mess around with them. Naruto gave a fast nod though he asked, why would one summon the Shinigami? Azura said, I don't know, but from what my wife said, they are important but too dangerous in the hands of man. So don't go snooping around them. Back to present. Naruto quickly was pulled out from his thoughts when he heard a sound. He heard someone speaking. Are you sure this is a good idea, Captain? Of course it is. Please reconsider, sir. This place is creepy as hell. It doesn't sign a good omen. We have no choice. Either we can stay here, or we let those fucking tree huggers find us. Naruto thought. Trouble. Naruto quickly extinguished the candle he had and went to hide in a dark corner just in time. He then saw a pair of two people come inside the shrine. Naruto saw that one of them was able to see that both of them were shinobi. However, one of the pair was wounded. The pair of fugitives were not on guard. The wounded one, who Naruto assumed to be the leader or captain, said, It's fine. This place is in the opposite direction of where we left our trail, so we should be in the clear here. This would be the last place those tree huggers would look at. The other one said, To get caught by that newly appointed Jounin bitch after staying inside the village all these years is really annoying. The captain said, I know it is vexing, but we have done our duties and overstayed our welcome. We need to find a way to leave the land of fire. Naruto was forming a plan in his mind when the junior said, You know, for an abandoned place, this does look a little too clean. The captain, who saw that, had the same thoughts. He then noticed the extinguished candle and sleeping bag and was immediately on guard. He signaled the junior with his mouth to stay silent. He then said, We know you are out here. Come out now yourself, or we flush you out. Naruto then thought that it would be useless to lay out an ambush as he had already been discovered. He cursed himself for leaving traces and then thought of a plan. Come out now, shouted the captain. He then gave a slight arg and held his hands on the right side of his waist. Naruto then came out of the shadows with a frightened look, but his appearance was different. He had brown hair and black eyes instead of his real look. He was sure that both men were spies, and if they were in the village for a long time, then they would know of his identity, and he didn't want to risk his chances being identified. He looked at them with a pitiful look that faltered the anger of both men. They both started whispering. It's just a kid, said the junior. Yes, said the superior in a grim manner. Are we? Asked the junior. The leader nodded his head and said, Leave no traces behind. But we can take him, dash. No time. He will be dead weight. The junior, who heard that, was grim. The junior then turned towards a frightened Naruto and said with a smile, Kid, Forget you ever saw us, and we will let you walk away." Naruto, who had actually heard the conversation between the pair of men, knew what they were planning. He knew that once he gets out of the building, they will kill him. After all, those two intend to stay the night, and they can't do it with a body in the shrine. However, he played along with their game for now. He said, "Thank you. I won't tell a soul." "Scram, kid," said the captain. Naruto then exited the building. As he made his way back to the village, he was sure that the junior was on his tail, trying to get rid of him. The junior was following the kid with a grim look. He thought, "No guts, no glory, huh? To think a time would come where I would have to take a kid's life. I am going to quit being a ninja after this mission." The junior then sneaked towards the kid and performed a slicing attack at Naruto and said, "Sorry, kid. Orders are orders." However, to his surprise, he found that what he sliced was not Naruto but a log. He thought, a substitution. The kid's a ninja. He was on alert. He then felt a presence behind his back and dodged an attack from a kunai. Naruto attacked the junior ninja relentlessly with both his tanbwa, but the junior blocked all of his attacks. "Well, what do you know? You got some skills, kid." "But that ain't enough to take me down," said the junior and brought out a katana. He then threw some shuriken at Naruto. Naruto deflected all those attacks with the pair tanbwa he held in his hands. He then went to form a direct assault on the shinobi. Both of them were careful not to use any ninjutsu. Naruto was careful not to use them so that he doesn't alert the other one in the temple, while his opponent did not use ninjutsu so that he doesn't alert the Konoha shinobi. Naruto thought, "I might need to do this quickly. His captain will start to become suspicious if this goes on for too long." The junior shinobi then saw Naruto trying to run away back into the village. He knew that he could not let him do that, as he will alert the village. Thus, he chased after him with full speed. He threw some shuriken at Naruto. Naruto dodged most of the shuriken and deflected some of the others. However, one of them did find their way to him and embedded on his back. The junior saw that Naruto fell down and intended to finish the job. He came near Naruto and said, "Well, kid, this is goodbye." "Yes, for you that is." He then saw behind him where a kunai was embedded in his throat. He thought, when did he dash, and then saw that the one he had hit was a substitution, but this time the log had the same shirt as him. The darkness along with his overconfidence had blinded him. Naruto then took out the kunai from the shinobi's throat. He saw his hands trembling and shivering. "I killed someone." The one mistake that Naruto made after killing the person was looking at the man's eyes. No matter how strong he was, no matter how much more mature he acted than his age, he was still a kid. And killing was not something he used to. He wanted to barf from the smell that came from the blood on the ground. However, he held himself together. "Remember, Naruto, there is still one more within the temple. Don't go into panic mode now. You were already prepared to kill them the moment they entered the shrine." Naruto knew that he was prepared to kill them the moment they entered the shrine, as he did not want to let out the secret that somebody was living in the temple to the Hokage via the Umbu. Naruto was sure that the Hokage knew of the temple's existence, but just did not bother to send someone to check the area. Naruto wanted to be thorough. He looked at the shinobi one last time before he prayed for him, giving his respects. He then transformed into his opponent and stabbed the corpse once again to smear some blood on his being. Naruto felt disgusted. He then took out a scroll and performed some hand seals. The body was sealed in the scroll. Naruto thought, "Now for the other one." Meanwhile, the captain was patiently waiting for his subordinate to return. He thought, "What's taking the fool so long? He should have killed and gotten rid of the body by now." He then looked at the no masks on the wall. He was curious about the masks ever since he found the place 3 years ago and researched on them. He thought of using the place as a base of operations many times before, but the place was rather far away from the village. However, the unusual thing about this place was that he could not get any kind of information from the archives in the Leaf, even the restricted section. He figured that this place is very special and just let it be. He found the masks oddly terrifying, but a beautiful piece of artwork as the masks were lifelike. He thought, these masks may have some worth for a collector. He went forward and took one of the masks, and it was at that time he saw that his subordinate had returned. He said, "Took you long enough." He saw that the subordinate had blood on his shirt and had a grim face. He frowned knowing what had happened and sighed. He said, "Look, I know it's not a glamorous job, but it is necessary." "I know." The captain didn't speak any further and asked, "Did you get rid of the body?" "Yes." "All right then. Get some rest. We are leaving at dawn. Our contact will meet us at the discussed spot and will let us move from there." The captain then took one of the masks from the wall and examined them. He then heard, "Why are you taking that?" "Well, this thing will fetch a pretty penny if we could sell it in an auction," said the leader. The junior just nodded his head at that and did not let out any more emotion. The leader then curiously looked at the mask he took. He thought, "I wonder how it looks on me." He was then about to wear the mask when he saw that his junior come at him with a kunai in hand. He thought of dodging, but his wound acted at the right time. Since he couldn't move, he could do only one thing. Naruto thrust his body forward towards the shinobi and cut him. He then felt that he broke something before he pierced the flesh. He then looked properly to find that he had broken the mask before he had pierced the throat of the leader. The leader had put the mask in between them to deflect the attack, but it was not enough as the mask had been broken through into two halves. Naruto was shocked as he did the one thing he shouldn't have. The leader was dead as the kunai had pierced cleanly through his throat, cutting off both his vocal cords and his jugular vein as the leader let out a short gurgle, then a blood-curdling scream. The blood splattered on the floor and on the masks. Drip, drip, drip. The sound of the blood falling off the edge of the kunai was the only sound that was heard. Naruto saw the mask he had broken and then saw that nothing happened. He believed that it might have done something even if it was broken, but nothing happened. So he thought, so nothing happened after all. Am I in the clear? However, his thoughts were cut off when he heard a sound from behind. Huh? Where am I? Aren't I supposed to be in the Shinigami's stomach? Naruto turned to look at a man in his 40s. He had violet eyes and a short beard on his face. His hair was long and was tied into a ponytail. He was dressed in blue and had wooden sandals. However, the one thing that stood about him was the color of his hair. Naruto thought, an Uzumaki. However, he was still on alert. The man then noticed Naruto and asked, "Hey boy, tell me, where am I? How to dash?" He then looked at the broken mask behind Naruto and said, "Oh." He said, "So you broke the mask, huh? Did the elders tell you not to do that? Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" Naruto was scared out of his mind. He felt something off about the man in front of him. He said, "I'm sorry I broke that mask, but I didn't mean to. This guy held it in front of me when I was about to kill him." The bearded Uzumaki saw the body and found Naruto was being honest and let him off. "Fine." Naruto said, "Just like that." The man asked, "Do you want to get punished?" Naruto shook his head, "No." "Good. Now go call the elders." Naruto didn't say anything. The man once again said, "Are you deaf, boy? Go call the elders." Naruto sighed and said, "There are some things I need to clear up with you, elder." The elder looked confused, question mark. Naruto took a big sigh and said, "The Uzumaki clan and Yuzushiogakure no longer exist." The elder had an expression of shock. He mouthed, "How dash?" Naruto said, "I will tell you all the details, Aji-san. But first let me clean up this mess. What I'm going to say may take a while, and we can't do that while having a corpse in the middle of the room." The elder frowned but nodded. Naruto silently went up to the captain and offered a prayer. He then searched his possessions for some scrolls or orders of any kind, something he can give to the Hokage without being traced. He found a scroll that was coded, but he knew the kind of code employed thanks to the time he spent in the library and read the details. He saw that both of these men were from a new village called Odo, and their goal was to obtain intelligence on shinobi, as he saw that some of the names of ninja and their abilities written in the scroll. He also understood that apparently an organization called Ne were involved in this, as they were mentioned in it, as the ones that are helping them get out. Naruto thought he had enough intelligence to give to the Hokage. He then opened a sealing scroll and was about to burn both of them with a fire style before the elder stopped. He asked, "What are you doing?" Naruto replied, "I can't let anyone find that I am living in this place. If the Hokage found out by reading their memories through the Yamanaka clan, then I can't come back to this place anymore." The elder said, "If that is what that's worrying you, then we can just wipe their memories of the past hour." Naruto had a surprised expression, question mark. The elder said, the Yamanaka weren't always our friends. We also found that their memory reading techniques to be troubling. So we had a technique to erase the memories of the corpses using Fuinjutsu. Naruto remembered what he read in the book. He knew that there was such a method, but that idea had passed his mind because he couldn't do advanced Fuinjutsu. The elder asked, what is it, boy? Naruto told about his predicament. The elder laughed and said, yes, to expect an 8-year-old to do such an advanced technique is pretty odd. Don't worry, I will watch over you and warn you if you do anything wrong. So go ahead and give it a try, all right? Naruto nodded his head. He took a brush and then wrote the words on a rather large empty scroll he found in the underground chamber. He did each step as he was told. He made a lot of mistakes each time, and the elder shouted at him for wasting materials, but after 5 such scrolls later, he was finally able to pull it off. The elder told, not bad, kid. Naruto gave the elder a nod and a grin. He then summoned the corpse of the shinobi he killed and laid it out in the center of the ceiling array. He then did a hand seal and shouted, Fuin. The words seemed to flow into the shinobi. Apparently, the sealing was a success. Naruto did the same for the other corpse and resealed them. He then cleansed the area of any blood that was left with water from a water ball jutsu. Once that was done and everything was cleansed, Naruto cleansed himself of the blood and grime and changed into a pair of spare clothes he had stashed in the temple. He was no longer under the transformation. The elder looked surprised but said nothing about it. He understood that the kid had things he liked to keep secret. He found it as a sign of trust from the kid to see that Naruto had shown his real appearance. The elder then said, well, now then, are you finally ready to tell me what happened? Naruto nodded and asked the man, so where do I start? The man said, start after the founding of Konoha. I want to know exactly what happened after I was sealed. Sometime later, the pair of males stayed silent. Naruto had just finished telling the story of how the Uzumaki's fall and the destruction of Yuzushiogakure. It was the man who broke the silence. He said, so the family fell apart. Damn it. I told those fools that this would happen. I told them that if we didn't dash. The man stopped talking in the middle and took a deep sigh. He spoke as if he knew that it was inevitable. He then turned towards Naruto and asked, so, mind telling me who you are now? Though I do sense Uzumaki blood flowing through you, I don't see any resemblance you have with the family. You don't have the family hair. Naruto then introduced himself. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, sir. My mother was an Uzumaki by the name of Kushina. She came to the village just before Yuzushio's destruction. She was from the main clan and was the daughter of Ryuho Uzumaki, the 68th clan head. Ryuho's daughter, said the man and looked stunned. He then laughed out loud and added, that brat was finally able to get married? Ha ha ha. Naruto asked, you know him? Ryuho replied, know him? Of course I do. The boy was my son. Naruto looked stunned. He then asked, so that makes you my? The man said with a smile and nodded, your great-grandfather, I suppose. Naruto was stunned. He was finally able to see a member of his family alive. Tears fell from his cheeks when he had that thought. He went forward to hug the man. It was then that Naruto came to find something. He couldn't touch the man. He just went through the person. He looked stunned and then realized. He said, why you are dash? The man just said, you can't touch something that isn't alive, kid. I am just a soul. The only reason you can see me is because my time in the mask had allowed me to manifest myself. Naruto understood. He was a bit disappointed that the person was not alive in the complete sense, but was still grateful that he was there by his side. The man then said, you know, I haven't introduced myself even after asking your name, have I? How rude of me. He then said with a smile, my name is Ryujin Uzumaki, son of Ashina Uzumaki, the 67th clan head and elder brother of Mido Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, Naruto. Chapter 4. 3 years later. An 11-year-old Naruto was sitting in front of the masked temple looking at the mask he had in his hand. He was much taller than he was before, however, he was still short compared to the average kid. It seemed that his growth spurt still had yet to come. He was deep in his thoughts, but one could notice the somber mood he had. He was really too deep in his thoughts that he flipped when he heard a voice from behind. Kid. Ga? Don't scare me like that, Gramps. The voice turned out to be from Ryujin. The red-haired man looked at Naruto and asked, "So what were you thinking about?" Naruto, looking back at the mask, "Just things." The man was silent for a while before he asked, "You want to talk about it?" Naruto sighed and looked at the mask. He then said, "I still have a lot of questions, Gramps, and I still can't find the answers to them. Who were the old gods? Who is the one? Why am I the one hearing it?" Ryujin stayed silent for a moment. He then asked, "Did it occur to you that you may be the one?" Naruto said, "Yes, but at the same time, it need not be me necessarily. I heard that plenty of Uzumaki had survived the fall of Yuzushiogakure. It can be one of them. The prophecy didn't exactly mention me by name." Ryujin said, "So you don't have faith in yourself, is it?" Naruto stayed silent. He then nodded his head slowly and watched the birds in the distance. Ryujin then said, "Well then, if you don't believe yourself to be the one, then so be it. Find the one who is." Naruto suddenly turned his head and asked, "What are you saying?" Ryujin said, "Well, if you are not the one, there must be some other who is. Find them and help them save the world." Naruto, who got a gleam of understanding, asked, "So you are asking me to?" Ryujin put it bluntly, "I am asking you to find the survivors and rebuild the Uzumaki clan while finding the one." Naruto, who saw that, understood what Ryujin was talking about and gave a determined nod. He had found a new goal. Ryujin asked, "However, I am curious, what brought this up?" Naruto was confused, question mark. Ryujin asked, "I mean, what brought this line of thought?" Naruto said, 3 years ago when I heard it from Azura Aji-san, I didn't care much about it. Honestly, even now I don't care much about it either, as my one goal right now is to protect Konoha and those in it by becoming Hokage. However, 3 years the thought of whether I am the one was brought up within me, and every time, Azura Aji-san's warning is the only thing that comes to mind. Am I strong enough? Ryujin, who heard that, was silent for a moment and then laughed. Naruto, who saw that, had a pouty face and asked, "What's so funny?" Ryujin still chuckled but managed to say, "It's just that this is the first time I am seeing you being a paranoid chicken." Naruto shouted, "Say what?" Ryujin snorted, "If idly thinking about the future and being scared about it without knowing what is to pass is not being a paranoid chicken, then what is it then?" Naruto said, "I am just being cautious." Ryujin asked, "About what?" "Something you never had in your control." Naruto nodded. Ryujin sighed and said, "The future is always unpredictable, just like you are most of the times, Naruto. I have learnt that lesson the hard way. Besides, you are still too young to be having such thoughts. Put a lid on it. Did you seriously hear yourself when you said your piece? If I didn't know how you look, I would have believed I was talking to an old man." Ryujin didn't want to hear Naruto say another word on the topic and thus asked, "Have you been practicing the sealing formula I taught?" Naruto, who heard that, had his facial expression light up like a Christmas tree. He said, "Yeah, I am finally able to do it on my own. Now I can properly use the written Fuinjutsu to seal elemental techniques." Naruto had been learning Fuinjutsu techniques ever since he had found Ryujin in the mask. Turns out that Ryujin is bounded to the broken mask and has been like that for a while now. He figured that he didn't have anything else to do and taught Naruto the art of Fuinjutsu. He told about the various Uzumaki creations and the various sealing arts right from the basics. Naruto struggled hard in the beginning due to his lack of practice with the brush and his understanding of the meaning and the characters, but with practice, he came to understand the core principles and grasped them like a true master. Ryujin said, "Good. Now you are a level 7 sealing master. You should be proud of that because it would take at least 2 decades for a person to become a level 7 at your age." Naruto smiled and then asked curiously, "So when did you become level 7? Ryujin said, "When I was 9 years old." Naruto, who heard that, shouted, "9?" Ryujin laughed as Naruto had a rain cloud over his head. He then said, "Forget it, kid. I was considered a prodigy even among the Uzumaki. Besides, I started learning the art much earlier than you did." Naruto, who heard that, had some form of consolation. However, his determination didn't waver. He said, "Just you wait. I am going to become the youngest level 10 seal master and become the most awesome Fuinjutsu specialist to ever exist. Ryujin snorted and said, "Huh, that's a good joke if I would hear any." Naruto said, "It will be real, believe it." Ryujin smiled, "Yeah, I believe you, kid." Naruto smiled and said, "Thanks, Gramps." He then looked at the sunset and said, "Well then, I am going back to the village now. See you tomorrow." Ryujin said, "Yeah, kid. Have some proper sleep. Don't train yourself to death. A good night's rest should always be appreciated within a shinobi." Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I will. You sure you don't want to come back to the village with me? I can always carry the mask back home." Ryujin said, "Nah, kid, it's fine. I like the peace and quiet here. Besides, this is the only thing left of home for me. I want to cherish as much as I can as long as I can." Ryujin muttered the last part of the sentence that Naruto couldn't hear it. Naruto asked, What did you say? I didn't quite catch that last part." Ryujin shook his head and said, "It's nothing. Just go back home and get some sleep." Naruto hung the broken mask back in its place on the wall. He then gave a big smile and said, "All right, see ya." Ryujin looked back at Naruto and said, "Look at how happy he is. Hard to believe that little squirt was depressed just few moments earlier." He looked around for a while and took a seat in Saizo in front of the masks. He started meditating. Naruto then was on his way back to Konoha. In the 3 years, Naruto had made a lot of progress in his skills. He was now an expert in ninjutsu due to his huge amount of chakra reserves, and his control was above average. He practiced his control way more than he did before, and this time he did it with a little shortcut. He figured that his chakra reserves will grow as he continues to grow due to the seal his dad had placed on him. Thus, with the assistance of Ryujin, he was able to place a limiter on his chakra, sealing it away, and slowly improving his chakra control as his reserves grew larger. As his control at a particular level improved, he unsealed the next part and adjusted to it before moving on to the next. Like that, he went on and on until he was at his current state. He knew that his chakra control still wasn't perfect as his reserves were still growing, but it was way more efficient than before. He also practiced some basic medical ninjutsu, like the mystic palm technique that can be used on the field along with some first aid and antidotes to some basic poisons. However, the need for him to use medical ninjutsu was low as his regeneration kicked in due to the Kyuubi. Other than that, Naruto had completely abandoned Jinjutsu. He didn't even give a second thought to it. He knew that even if his chakra control improved, it still wouldn't have the finer control that Jinjutsu required. Taijutsu was overall not bad as not much improvement was made without a teacher. Ryujin was able to give some pointers to him, but with the lack of a sparring partner, as Ryujin couldn't touch Naruto, his progress was stagnant. However, Naruto was now confident to take on a low chunin like the one he had killed 3 years ago, using his taijutsu skills alone, as his speed and strength had improved phenomenally due to hard work the last 3 years. One other thing that improved was his shuriken jutsu, which improved much over the 3 years. He is now able to throw 5 shuriken precisely at his targets, which allowed him to pass the graduation test with ease. However, the most improved aspect of his abilities is unlocking the Uzumaki bloodline he never knew 2 years ago. Flashback. "Yes, faster," shouted Ryujin watching Naruto dodge the kunais in the training room. "I am trying." "Trying isn't good. You need to focus. Speed and reflexes are important as much as strength," said Ryujin. Naruto huffed and puffed while dodging the infinite volley of kunai that attacked him from machines that fired them. However, one kunai still found its way behind his back and lodged onto it. Naruto shouted, "Ah!" But the kunai was no longer there. So were the machines and other kunai that had fallen off the ground. All of them had disappeared. Ryujin used a sand clock to measure the time and said, "Not bad, but still some improvements can be made." Naruto found the room through Ryujin, who told him of its existence underground. It had long been there. He showed to Naruto the many rooms that existed in the underground layer. Naruto was super surprised to find all the rooms below the temple. He saw that the so-called lair was actually a refuge and a hideout that has not been used for a long time ever since Konoha was established. Some of the Senju knew of the place, and even though they encouraged the Uzumaki to stay, the clan refused due to some political problems associated with them not being part of Konoha and yet living in their territory. though they asked that the Senju the place be restricted to only the Senju and the Uzumaki. Though the Senju have been to the place many a times, not once have they found the secrets within it, as it can only be accessed by an Uzumaki. The doors were operated with a blood seal on some parts of the walls along with a key only the main clan members knew. It doesn't respond if one doesn't have both the blood and the key, and fortunately, Naruto knew both due to Ryujin. Coming back on topic, the training room was a simulation room created by the Uzumaki by combining illusions with Fuinjutsu. They had made the room so that the clan members can train in the room to improve their skills. It was a pure piece of art. However, the sad part being that it was only a Jinjutsu, and thus it could only improve your reaction skills and your speed, as all the things spawned are illusions that cannot be touched. Ryujin spotted Naruto, who was sweaty and tired. He said, "That's enough for today." Naruto said, "I can still keep going." Ryujin asked Naruto, "Are you sure?" Naruto said, "Yeah." Ryujin said, "All right then. One more, and that's it." Naruto nodded and got up. He once again channeled his chakra to his body once again and took a slow and deep breath. Ryujin, who looked at Naruto, said, "All right, here it comes." Naruto started dodging the kunai once again. This time he had more determination to do so as never before. He made a promise to himself that he was going to beat the record time today, and he was beating it no matter what. He had been moving fast continuously. Ryujin noted his movements and nodded. His reaction is better than before, and he started to think where the kunai will come at him. Hope he has the same thing in the next level. What Ryujin didn't share with Naruto was that the longer that Naruto stayed unhurt by the kunai, the faster they became. Naruto didn't notice that it was not him becoming slower, but it was the kunais becoming faster. Naruto had now crossed his record time. It was the same time that he had always been stuck at, which gave way to a lot of frustration for him due to not being able to cross that. His mind was only thinking two things: faster. Where next? His eyes scanned the room as quickly as it could and saw which machine was throwing next. He narrowly dodged one of the kunais which went right by his nose. He thought, "I couldn't see them." He then thought, "If I couldn't see them, then maybe." He then closed his eyes and tried to hear where the kunai will come next. He could hear one of the machines click. He immediately dodged, avoiding a kunai on the first try. He shouted, "Yes." Ryujin stated, "Good Naruto. You have finally understood that you should not only rely on your eyes, but also on your other senses. But focus, don't let your revelation impede you from progress. Celebrate later." Naruto nodded, "Right." Ryujin thought, "The boy is maturing fast. I wonder if he will beat the record time though." The kunai then became even faster. Some had transitioned to the speed of sound, and Naruto had less than a millisecond to dodge them. He moved even faster, now dodging another big volley of kunai. However, he thought, it became faster. What do I do now? His thoughts were, however, interrupted when he saw another volley of kunai coming right at him. He thought, need to dodge. He then looked at one of the corners and saw a blind spot for the machine on the edge of a wall. He moved towards the spot, avoiding all possible kunai flying toward him. He jumped and tried to reach the area by extending his hand to grab onto one of the hooks on the wall to pull and catapult himself to that spot, but he couldn't. He thought, no, not like this. Not after this far. It was then the miracle happened. He saw a golden wire come out of his hand and grab the hook and immediately pull him up. He went up to that spot with a surprise. He looked at his hand again and saw what it was that he did, but couldn't understand how he did it. Ryujin, who saw the entire thing, said, "Finally." Naruto looked at Ryujin, looking for an explanation. Ryujin sighed and said, "That is our clan's bloodline ability. Every Uzumaki in the world has the ability to use it, but only a few ever unlock it." Naruto asked, "Like the Sharingan?" Ryujin nodded, "Yes. Though ours is a bit different. While the Sharingan is driven by hatred, ours is through strength of will." Naruto looked confused. Ryujin sighed and explained, "This training simulation was actually built to fortify a person's will to unlock his or her bloodline apart from increasing their reaction speed. The Fuinjutsu incorporated inside the room has a passive effect of testing a person's will to do something. In this case, you trying to find an extension of yourself." Naruto understood what Ryujin was talking about. He said, Perseverance is key. Ryujin nodded. Exactly. Naruto asked, I do know that our clan has the ability to manifest chakra, but isn't it in the form of chains? Why is mine ninja wires? Ryujin shook his head and said, I don't know. The both of them stayed silent for some time, contemplating it before Ryujin said, I believe it may be due to a small divergence in the bloodline that caused a mutation to appear. Though I would ask you to be careful with those, Naruto. Naruto asked, why? Ryujin said, it is better if I show you. Now that you have unlocked your bloodline ability, it would be easy to call upon them. Just think about the wires coming out your body, but do it slowly. Naruto did exactly as he was told and immediately imagined a wire come out from his hand. Slowly, one golden wire came out of his body. Then two more came, but that was his limit. He then saw the wires and thought, awesome. Ryujin said, now I want you to try and grab that kunai in the distance and try using it to cut your wire. Naruto did exactly as he was told and tried to grab the kunai with his wire, but as soon as he tried to cut it, the kunai was sliced in half very cleanly. Ryujin explained, normally the clan's chains is primarily used for draining a target and temporarily sealing them. They have a draining effect on most shinobi. If you don't know how to control them, you could kill them. However, your wires seems to be even more deadly due to the fact that your chakra has enhanced the wires, making them stronger than steel, drastically increasing their cutting power. Naruto said, then what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Ryujin sighed and shook his head. This kid, how the hell can you be so energetic? He then noticed Naruto say, yeah, I unlocked my clan ability. Now I can final. Naruto then fainted on the floor due to exhaustion. Ryujin, who saw that, said, well, so much for enthusiasm. Back to present. Since then, Naruto had been practicing using the ability on various dummies. There were a few times where he was asked to test on a few wild animals, but they never went as far as to challenge human beings. Finally, Naruto had reached his apartment. The sun had set a long time ago, and thus Naruto decided to call it quits and go to sleep, and sleep he did. The next day, Naruto came to the academy like usual. He was there for a while and hung out with some of his friends. He didn't pay attention to what was said in class and just slept for a while before a piece of chalk found its way to his head. Pay attention, Naruto, or do you want to stand outside again? Naruto woke up while rubbing his head and said, it's not my fault your lectures are boring, Irika-sensei. Look, even Shikamaru is fast asleep. Shikamaru, who awoke, said, thanks man, real help you gave me. Choji said with a bag of chips underneath his desk. It's all right, Shikamaru. Here, do you want a potato chip? Kiba laughed. Yeah, the loser may be an idiot, sensei, but your lectures still are boring. Meanwhile, everyone else in the class watched on what the gang were doing. Some of the girls just looked at them with scorn and disgust, while others had neutral expression on their face. However, one duck-butt hairstyled kid with a blue shirt looked on with a condescending look. He looked as if he was not bothered by what was going on in the class. Irika had a vein popping out his forehead and said with a smile, all right then, class. Since these guys are feeling bored with my lectures, I am going to arrange a pop quiz for everyone tomorrow. So be prepared. The whole class groaned at the punishment and complained, but Irika will have none of it. He shouted, all right, that's enough. My decision is final. One more thing. The one who scores the lowest in the class will have to clean the whole school as punishment. Everyone who heard that were surprised. However, one of the kids said, it's fine, Irika-sensei. It's going to be Naruto, who does that anyway. He always scores the lowest in class. Another said, yeah, the guy is the dead last. Everyone who heard that started agreeing with what was said and laughed. They shouted, huh? What a loser. Loser. One of the girls said outright, he should just quit. They laughed, and unusually Naruto did not show any form of hurt. Even if he was hurt, he didn't show a single sign that said he was. It was the usual for him after all. Irika, who heard the comments, frowned and said, all right, that's enough out of you guys. Naruto was extra careful in not trying to reveal his strengths. He knew that there will be some occasions where he will have to show, but wanted to minimize the kinds of events where he had to show his real strength. Especially in the academy, which was monitored by the civilian council. Naruto knew that many students and teachers of the academy were some way involved with the council members, and once they knew of his strengths, they may try to either get rid of him or try to control him. The current him was not strong enough to oppose the council. He knew that the Hokage had lost many of his powers and sway over the years, which have been transferred to these group of civilians who mainly handle the civilian aspect of the village. The academy being one of them was their backyard, and Naruto didn't want to poke the hornet's nest. So he acted the fool in the class, not attending any of the classes properly. He bunked classes to either train or prank on the citizens. He made a balance between the two so that the teachers won't get suspicious on what he's doing, as they will just assume he is goofing off and let him be. At least most of the teachers do that due to their prejudice of him being the QB and a ticking time bomb that would eventually destroy the village. The only exception being Iruka, who cared what he did. Naruto knew that there was a time when his sensei hated him, and he didn't think much of him either. However, it changed after a few days when Iruka started to open up to him. He was out doing pranks alone when Iruka somehow managed to find him and bring him back to class. To Naruto, it was a new experience. Even though he laughed outside, he was still a pretty lonely kid, and to think that someone cared enough about him to bring him back to class was astonishing. It showed that Iruka considered Naruto as a student. Thus, Naruto made it a point to attend Iruka's classes even if he found them boring. He never bothered even listening to the other teachers, but somehow always listened to Iruka's words. Though Iruka was quite the boring teacher that Naruto always found himself falling asleep during his lectures. The bell rang and school was finally over. Naruto was now making his way out of class when Iruka called him. "Hey Naruto." He looked back at Iruka and asked, "What is it, sensei?" Iruka said, "I was thinking on going to Ichiraku today. Want to tag along?" Naruto had a gleam on his face when he heard the word ramen and shouted, "Yada, you are treating me today, sensei." Iruka laughed and said, "All right, kid, pipe down, it's just ramen." Naruto looked astonished and said, "How can you say that, Iruka-sensei? Ramen is the food of the gods." Iruka said, Yeah, you want to come now, or are you going to just stand there preaching like a fanatic?" Naruto said, "Yeah, wait for me." Naruto then tagged along with Iruka and had their meal at Ichiraku. It was then Iruka asked, "Naruto, I want to ask you something." Naruto, who was having his fifth bowl, said, "What is it, sensei?" Iruka asked, "Why do you always seem to attend my classes only?" Naruto gulped and asked, "What do you mean, sensei?" Iruka said, "Don't lie to me, Naruto. I know that you always bunked all your other classes to goof off, but if somehow I came to the class, you seem to be attending it." Naruto thought, "Oh no, how do I manage this now?" Iruka said, "Is it because you are not interested, or is it because they don't teach you good enough?" Naruto remained silent at that. Iruka sighed and said, "Naruto, I made a check on all the classes you attended, and it seems that you have only attended my class from what I hear from the students. When I asked the teachers, they said that you usually don't attend the classes and just goof off on your own. While they said that, I was able to find out some lack of interest in you and some scorn. So I wanted to make sure. I asked around, and one of the students was able to confirm my suspicions." Naruto said with a glum face, "And what will you do now, Iruka-sensei?" Iruka said, "I can inform the third dash." Naruto interrupted him. "Informing the third will be useless without proof. Unless you want all the teachers in the academy to be interrogated by Yamanaka, which would only cause dissatisfaction in the already dissatisfied Chunin who were put in the academy after failing to do their duties properly on the field. There will be a case of firing and suspension, and then what? Do you think the situation will be solved? The new teachers will arrive, warned of their predecessors' mistakes. Fear will motivate them to teach me. However, they will do the things with a lackadaisical attitude." Iruka, who heard that, was stunned. He thought, "Is this Naruto?" Naruto looked him in the eye and said, "You don't need to worry about me, Iruka-sensei. Even if I attended their classes, I believe that I will learn way more alone than use their help like I am now. I don't need pity or forced help. I attend your classes because you genuinely care about me as a student. Does that answer satisfy you?" Iruka was silent for a moment and then said, "You really thought this through, haven't you?" Naruto nodded his head and stayed silent. Iruka said, "Fine, I will let you off for now." Naruto looked at him and asked, "For now?" Iruka smiled and said, "Well, truth is, I already informed the third Hokage about what happened as the teachers were sabotaging one of students' growth, which is a serious crime. The Hokage called one of the teachers to go through the Yamanaka probe and found out what was really happening. He then called out all the teachers who were suspicious and did the same thing with all the others. All were found guilty. Naruto then said, "Then why did you ask?" Iruka said, "Well, truth is, I thought the same thing as you before, and I thought of a solution. From here on, I'm going to be the one that handles all your classes, Naruto." Naruto, who heard that, was stunned. "Why?" Iruka smiled and said, "Well, since no one seemed to care much about you like I did, I thought it was my responsibility to look after you." Iruka then scratched his neck due to embarrassment. Naruto, who was stunned, smiled and then cried. He hugged Iruka and said, "Thanks, Sensei, for everything." Iruka, who heard that, gave a grin and said, "All right then, but don't you dare miss classes like you do from here on, mister." Naruto, who heard that, gave a laugh and said, "Well, I can't promise you that, Sensei." Iruka asked, "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Naruto didn't respond and just ran away from the shop. He said, "Thanks for the meal, Sensei." Iruka, who heard that, said, "Come back here and explain to me what you mean by that." Naruto. Tucci, who listened in on the conversation, smiled. He thought, well, the kid finally found someone to care for him. He then said to Iruka, "Well, are you going to pay for his meal now? I have a business to run, you know." Iruka looked at Tucci and sighed. He paid for the meal and walked away thinking, that little brat may not be thinking about bunking my classes after all the trouble I went through. Meanwhile, Naruto was making his way back to his home when he noticed that someone following him. He sighed and thought, "Hinata, she's at it again." Naruto noticed Hinata started stalking him a few days later his talk with her. Naruto figured that she was just shy and wanted to approach him, but she never did. Naruto didn't want to embarrass her and thus let her be. However, he always made sure to lose her tail before he made his way to the masked shrine. He found it weird and thought, man, this is the 6th time this week. He sighed and thought, enough is enough. I waited 3 years for her to man up and speak to me. He said, "Come out. I know you are there, Hinata." Hinata meekly came out of her hiding spot with a small blush on her face. Naruto, who saw her, thought, "See cute." Hinata said, I just w dash. Naruto smiled. "How long are you going to stay away and watch me from a distance? You know that you can always come to me and speak, right?" Hinata was shocked. Her blush increased and she asked, what? Naruto said, "I knew that you just wanted to talk with me, Hinata, and you meant nothing bad by it." Hinata's body was growing hotter by the second. She thought, I am speaking with Naruto-kun. She always wanted to speak with him, but she was just too shy to do so. She wanted to become friends with him, but was unable to do so due to her shyness. Thus, she started following him in order to find the right moment to talk with him, but that right moment never came, and thus it turned to complete stalking for the past 3 years. She never knew when it started, but observing Naruto had become her favorite pastime as of late. He was always cheerful and bright that Hinata was happy to just watch him. However, she also noticed that he disappeared a few times she stalked him and cannot be found anywhere. She thought that he must be training in secret and wanted no one to disturb him and just let him be. She was afraid that she was caught, but she noticed that Naruto never asked her or acted as if he didn't know that Hinata thought that she was still in the safe zone. The more she saw him, the more her feelings grew. Sometimes, she was able to spot him after training. She noticed the evidence of him working hard by the condition of his clothes and the tired look on his face. She saw him carrying on, working on his own as the teachers in the academy didn't bother teaching him properly. It was an act that she frowned on, but she couldn't do anything as her condition was not so good as to help others. Seemingly, all the teachers in the academy seemed to be against him. It was then she was able to get the help of Iruka-sensei, who she noticed to be in favor of Naruto, and informed him of the problems. Her admiration of him grew due to his drive to fight against what others think of him rather than giving into the idea. She wanted to be just like him, and thus she grew to care for him like one of her own in her mind. Her admiration for him made her following like a puppy, like a little sibling's admiration towards a cool elder brother. Thus it came as a surprise when the person she was following was the one who initiated the conversation. and thus her brain could only do one thing. Shutting down. Cue Windows shut down theme. She fainted. Naruto, who saw that, was surprised. He shouted, "Hinata? Hey, Hinata. Hinata, wake up. What happened?" He went to her side and tried to wake her up, but she didn't wake up. He thought, so much for trying to initiate a conversation. He thought that it would be bad if she left her in the middle of the way and thus took her back to her clan's estate and surrendered her to the guards, saying that she fainted due to exhaustion. The guards thanked him for sending her back to them, to which he responded kindly before leaving the place. He then went to the masked shrine and asked to train. He shouted, "Hey Gramps, I am here." Ryujin came to Naruto and said, "Naruto, you are here, good." Naruto said, "So can we start training?" Ryujin shook his head and said, "We are not going to be training today, Naruto." Naruto asked, "What? What?" Ryujin said, "With the mastery of the level 7 Fuinjutsu, our clan's bloodline technique, and our clan's taijutsu, I have taught you everything you need to know. From here on, you must advance by yourselves. Everything you need to know with regards to Fuinjutsu is already within the books of this shrine. I can no longer help you." Naruto asked, "Wait? What?" Ryujin said, "The time has come for me to leave this world for good." Chapter 5. Naruto was in a very confused state right now. He didn't move a single muscle due to the shock of the news that he received. Eventually, once his brain had picked up what was happening, all that he could say was, "What?" Ryujin sighed. He said, "It's inevitable." Naruto then teary-eyed. He asked, "But why? You have been fine until now." Ryujin was silently contemplating for a while before he began to speak. "It's because I exist as a soul, Naruto. I exist as a soul in a realm where souls shouldn't exist." He saw that Naruto wasn't listening but still didn't stop saying, "The only reason I was able to exist in the physical world was because of the mask. The mask had collected some spiritual energy over the years which I used to maintain my existence. However, that energy is now depleted and I don't have a source that can provide me the energy." Naruto said, "So you are going to leave me too?" He was looking at the floor rather pitifully. However, Ryujin hardened his heart and then said in a strict tone, "Is that a good enough reason for you to cry?" Naruto then looked up and shouted at him, "Of course it is." Ryujin said, "Then I have raised you wrong." Naruto looked stunned at what he said. Ryujin then continued, "An Uzumaki shall never shed his tears at the passing of a loved one. Instead, they shall smile at the memory they shared while they were alive. If the death was unjustified, then seek justice. If the death was natural, then wish them well for the journey ahead." Naruto, who heard that, was silent. Ryujin said, "These are the words of one of the ancestors regarding the death of a family member." He continued, "My leaving this world, like I said, is inevitable. After all, I am already dead. However, if you think that you are making me happy by moping about it, then you are wrong. It is what it is. Crying and moping will not change it." Naruto slowly nodded his head and stopped crying. Ryujin then smiled and said, "Good. Now then, I think it's time I passed on some things to you, while I do have some time left." Naruto asked, "What things?" Ryujin said, "Come with me." Naruto then followed Ryujin into the temple, where he saw Ryujin stop in front of the masks. He said, "It's time." Naruto asked, "Time for what?" Ryujin said, "Naruto Uzumaki, do you swear that you will protect the secrets of our clan and the true nature of it?" Naruto asked, "Wait, why are you?" Ryujin asked, "Do you swear or not?" Naruto took for a moment before taking a deep breath. He said, "I do." "Do you swear that you will be the pillar of support for our people and to protect the clan with your life?" Naruto said, "I do." Ryujin said, "Then Naruto Uzumaki, under my right as an elder and member of the Inner Council, I hereby name you as the 69th clan head of Clan Uzumaki." Naruto was stunned at what he was saying. "Wait, why did you dash?" Ryujin smiled and said, "Well, it was the last thing I could do. Though it is unofficial and not the right way to do things, as we usually have a council to appoint someone as the clan head, but I still have the right to appoint someone as the clan head as an elder under certain circumstances, even if I was removed from inheriting the clan. You are lucky on that regard." Naruto asked, removed from inheriting the clan? Ryujin said, well, we will get to that. He saw that Ryujin turned to look at the masks and then heard him say, do you know the purpose of these masks, Naruto? Naruto said, isn't it to invoke the Shinigami? That's what Azure-sense said to me. Ryujin shook his head. That is only partly correct. These masks have a second purpose, though it is only known to members of the clan. Naruto asked, a second purpose? Ryujin asked, why don't you take a guess? Naruto thought for a while before he took a look at Ryujin and realized. He dreadfully asked, you mean? Ryujin nodded. Yes, they are meant to act as prisons for souls. Naruto was disgusted at the thought. To imprison a soul is worse than delivering death. Ryujin continued. All those masks you see here are all imprisoned souls who have fought the Uzumaki. They all committed heinous crimes that even death is considered a mercy. Naruto then asked, then did you? Ryujin nodded and said, I. Naruto turned sad knowing that, but said, why? What did you do? Ryujin said, I failed my duties as a clan heir. Naruto didn't say anything, but Ryujin continued. I was supposed to be the one that was to inherit my father's place as the clan head. As far as I knew, everyone supported me and no one were against me as I was the clan's genius. Ryujin said, I had a younger brother, Ryui. Mito and I were as close as you can imagine. We were happy even in those times where war waged on between clans. Then each of us married our spouses as per our duties to the clan and had children of our own. We moved on with our lives still being close siblings. Hashirama battled with Madara and reconciled. They created Konohagakure no Sato. Soon other villages followed, including Yuzushiogakure no Sato. Yuzushiogakure was already advanced in terms of technology, and we aimed on improving that. Though we do battle, the Uzumaki has always been a relatively peaceful clan and were reclusive. We didn't share our secrets with the world, and that became our undoing. Those who were around us didn't like us and saw us as a threat. I realized this fact soon and implored our people to come out of Yuzushio, to share the technology with the others and make alliances. However, they didn't listen. And by the time they did, it was already too late. Well enough, an attack was made when I, my brother and 20 other clansmen were returning from an important mission that could improve the position of our village strategically. However, we were ambushed on the way. Though we were outnumbered 2-1, we were able to intercept and deal with most of them with a few losses. However, victory was short as reinforcements came. My brother, exhausted, was injured and knocked out cold. Soon only 9 of us or so remained. We were on the run. It was then, as the leader, that I was forced to make a choice. Naruto asked, a choice? Ryujin said, a choice to either save my brother by using the clansmen as decoys or abandon my brother and make a gamble to save the remaining clansmen. Naruto remained silent. Ryujin continued, when you think about it, it isn't much of a choice, is it? Your brother or your fellow clansmen? Who should I value more? In the end, I chose my brother over my clan, dooming my people as my love for him exceeded the love for my clan. The remaining clansmen understood and knew the first choice was the better, as the latter was still a gamble. They would rather see at least 2 souls surviving the ambush than to have all die. I carried my brother back to the village with a heavy heart. I had to go tell widows that their husbands have passed away and children that their fathers will never come back. Naruto was silent as Ryujin told his tale. Ryujin then said, the clan understood my choice and didn't blame me. They knew about me and the nature of the mission we took. However, it didn't lessen my crime. I let my clansmen die even if I saved my brother. It was an unforgivable crime. I had dishonored the name of my clan and thus decided the punishment that has to be meet for it myself. I relinquished my title as clan heir and gave it to my brother before I had my soul to be sealed in that mask you hold. However, I did that only after I made sure that the clan could survive the calamity that would befell them should they stay on the path of seclusion. It took a few years, but I thought I made it. But now it seems all the effort I had put has been and always will be futile. Naruto asked, so wait, then you voluntarily sealed yourself? Ryujin nodded, yes. He then asked, why are you telling me all of this? I am telling you this because I want you to know, Naruto-kun. There will come a time when you will have to make hard decisions like this. The life of a shinobi is harsh and cold, and it will always put you between a rock and a hard place. I want you to know that, no matter what decision you make, never have any regrets when making these decisions because no matter the path you take, there will always be regrets. Ryujin said, I don't regret saving my brother. If I had to do it again, I would still choose to do the same thing. Naruto remained silent contemplating on what Ryujin said. The couple shared their moment of silence before Naruto spoke. I understand, Aji-san. Ryujin nodded. Good. Now then, I have one last thing I need to show you before I leave. Naruto asked, what is it? Ryujin said, a technique. An hour later. It was midnight by the time both Ryujin and Naruto were finished. Naruto looked at Ryujin and said, Aji-san, you are starting to fade. Ryujin looked down at his torso and noticed it. He said, I guess this is goodbye, Naruto-kun. Naruto was trying hard not to cry. He said, I am going to miss you. Ryujin gave a grin and said, I am sure you will, kiddo. Ryujin then asked, Naruto? Naruto responded, yes, Aji-san, what is it? Ryujin then asked, can you fulfill one last wish for this old man? Ryujin's body was half faded right now. Naruto quickly responded, of course. I will do what I can, Aji-san. What is it? Please tell me. Ryujin's torso started fading faster until his chest faded completely, but he still was able to say, I want you to go back to Uzushio and pay respects to the clan in my stead. I wish to go there. Ever since I heard what happened, to see it with my own eyes. One last time. Naruto said, yes, of course. I will go there as soon as I could. Ryujin said, thank you. No, that I will. Always love you. Ryujin then faded away completely, leaving Naruto alone. Naruto then smiled, but the tears won't stop coming out of his eyes. He then looked at the broken mask Ryujin came out from as his tears fell on it. He then wore it. From this day forth, I am Naruto Uzumaki, 69th clan head of the Uzumaki. Yindi. A/N. That would be the perfect place to stop this chapter, even though it is very short. What? I couldn't help it, you know. And for the record, the mask is not completely broken, just that there is a huge fracture running across the mask diagonally, and one of its horns is broken, giving it the asymmetrical cool look. So now then, it's time I end this. Bye? What are you guys still doing? I said by now go. Do your other jobs while go to a corner and moss, and meditate. Yeah, I was totally going to say meditate. What, you still haven't left? I said show's over. Buzz off. Yeah. I don't know why I do this sometimes, even though I know that it's not that funny. Well, it does irritate you, so yay for me. Well then, since you have waited for so long, let's just continue with the next half of the story, shall we? 7 years later. Cough. 7 dog years later. Naruto was now in the last year in his academy. It was good. He failed the graduation 3 times on purpose right for this moment. But right now he wasn't in the academy. Instead, he was out doing pranks on the people of the village dressed up in his ridiculous orange jumpsuit. Well, that was one segment. The other segment was doing artwork on all of the Hokage faces. Naruto, come back here. Ha ha ha. You'll never catch me. He ran around the village being chased by Chunin. However, they could never catch him as he always sprung a trap on them. Oh, he was just that good. He used traps and simple tricks to outsmart the Chunin, who always thought that he was an idiot, while they were underestimating the blonde. Naruto then escaped from the Chunin by hiding in one of the wells. He came out and slapped the dirt of his hands. He said, that was too easy. Oh yeah, said a voice from behind. Naruto then looked at the voice and said, Iruka-sensei, what are you doing here? Iruka responded, what am I doing here? The question is, what are you doing here? You were supposed to be in class. Iruka then dragged Naruto back to the academy tied up in a rope and left him in the corner of a classroom. He didn't lecture Naruto, but said that he had to clean up his mess and then continued on with his class. Naruto thought, that's strange. Usually, he would have some choice words with me. The bell was then heard, and the class was dismissed. Iruka untied Naruto, and they marched right off to the Hokage faces. Once Naruto was done cleaning, Iruka said to him, hey, you want to head out for some ramen? Naruto, who heard that, gave him the grin of a fox. He said, "You named it, sensei." 3 ramen bowls later. Irika, who had a meal with Naruto, asked, "So are you ready for the graduation test tomorrow?" Naruto said, "Yeah, I am. Believe it. This time I am going to pass for sure." Irika said, "Then it's all good." Naruto asked in disbelief, "You believe me?" Irika said, "I remember it was this same time last year, when you showed that you knew what you were doing. I am not going to interfere with tomorrow's test. Though I have to warn you, if you can't do the clone jutsu properly, then I will have to fail you." Naruto became silent. He then asked, "Hey, sensei?" Irika asked, "What?" Naruto said, "What if instead of the one taught at the academy, I do my own variation of the clone jutsu?" Irika asked with surprise, "You know of other clone jutsus?" Naruto nodded his head and said, "Yes." Irika said, "Then it's all good." Naruto grinned and said, "All right then. Then I have no problems. Thanks again for the meal, sensei." Naruto ran out, leaving a disgruntled Irika to pay the bill. Again, he went forward and was in deep thought. "Tomorrow, I am going to start my life as a shinobi." He was deep into thought about the times he spent to get to where he was and about his plans for the future. He was so deep that he didn't notice that a friendly stalker was looking at him from a distance. Well, not until he was nearly home, that is. Naruto looked at the hidden girl and sighed. He then thought, "Here we go again." Naruto then disappeared suddenly. Moments later, Hinata came back to the place that Naruto had gone off and whispered, "Where did he go?" "Boo. Kaya." Hinata had found herself to be screaming from the scare that Naruto gave her as he laughed. She then turned angry and said, "Not fair, Naruto-kun." Naruto responded, "That's what you get for stalking me like that again, Hinata. I have told you many times to stop that, didn't I?" Hinata shyly responded, "I'm sorry." Naruto sighed and then said, "Why are you following me again, Hinata? I thought we were already past that phase." Hinata just blushed and said, It's just that I didn't want to disturb while you were training, Naruto-kun." Naruto sighed. He then thought of the time he had spent with Hinata the past year. After that incident where he confronted her stalking for the first time, Hinata later found him alone, apologized, saying that she was being rude by doing that. However, Naruto said that he didn't mind and would love to get to know her as a friend. Hinata didn't faint at the time and just had a deep blush before she accepted. She then started interacting with Naruto on a daily basis, and her issues with self-confidence slowly disappeared due to these interactions. At least some aspects of it. She still thinks she is weak on many regards, however, it no longer made her meek and shy. While she was not so outspoken, she spoke normally without stuttering and was no longer afraid to say out her mind if she was asked by someone. Naruto just sighed. He then noticed that it was already late. He asked, "Want me to walk you home?" Hinata blushed. She nodded her head and said, If you don't mind." Both of them walked silently. Naruto then asked, "So we are graduating tomorrow?" Hinata said, "Yes." Naruto asked, "So, are you confident on passing tomorrow?" Hinata nodded her head and said, "Yes. My father has been training me on that aspect. He even started to train me more than before." Naruto said, "That's good to hear." Hinata said, "Naruto-kun?" Naruto responded, "Yes, Hinata." Hinata said, "I want to thank you." Naruto asked, "For what?" Hinata replied, "For making me feel more confident than I was before. I still know that I have a long way to go, but you helped me out a lot. I don't know how to thank you, Dash." Naruto cut her off. "Hinata, whatever gains you had over in this past year is yours and yours alone. Don't give the credit to me. You are the one that removed your low self-esteem, not me. Yes, you may have had some help, but help is given only when the receiver is willing to take the help." Hinata smiled and said, "Thank you." Naruto responded, "You're welcome." Hinata then noticed that she was nearing the compound and then thought, "All right, Hinata, this is it. The mood is perfect." Hinata then said, "Naruto-kun?" Naruto said once again, "Yes, Hinata? What is it?" Hinata then started off, I, I wanted to say that I. Naruto asked, "You?" Hinata said, "I." "Hinata-sama, there you are." One of the guards came into their conversation. He noticed Naruto, but just ignored his existence just like all others. He said, "Hinata-sama, Lord Hayashi is calling for you. He wishes to speak with you in his study." Hinata thought, "There goes my chance." She smiled and then said, "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but I have to see my father now. I'll see you in the academy tomorrow." Naruto said, "It's fine, Hinata. See you tomorrow." Hinata thought, "Yeah, it's fine. I still have time." Hinata noticed that she started having feelings for Naruto after their interactions together. At first, he felt like somewhat of an older brother who protected her, but soon those feelings faded away and these new ones came into being. She then noticed that she was the only one who held feelings for Naruto and no one else did. All the other girls in the class were busy fawning on Sasuke, while no one noticed Naruto. While he was often the subject of scorn among the girls, she didn't mind. After all, she understood that they didn't know what they were missing on. Her feelings grew, and the single subconscious thought came into being. He's mine, and only mine. That thought grew as they interacted. Thus it resulted her awakening a feeling she never knew before. A feeling of possessiveness. She tried confessing before, but all those times got up either being interrupted or ruined. However, that didn't discourage her as she thought. I still have time. After all, no one in the village is going to notice him. Oh, how wrong her thought process was. But she wouldn't know that for another 3 months. The next day, Naruto was sitting in the class, right now awaiting the final phase of the examination. He finished the written aspect a while ago and made it so that he would pass just fine if not barely. He was the last one to be assessed that day. He was called and he went in. He saw that Irika and one of their teachers, Mizuki-sensei, was seated in the examiner's seat with a desk in front covered in white cloth. There was a banner behind them that read exam in kanji. Naruto always knew that Mizuki was one of the ones that secretly hated him even if he kept a smiling face when he was around. But he didn't mind it, as he was no different than every other villager who did that. Irika then spoke. "Well then, Naruto, I want you to perform the transformation jutsu, and don't do anything perverted." Naruto grunted and said, "Ah, Irika-sensei, you're no fun." He then transformed into Irika. Irika, who saw the transformation, nodded his head. "All right then, I want you to perform a substitution." Naruto nodded his head and had a smile on his face. He then poofed. Irika noticed that he was the one that was substituted, and he saw Naruto, sitting on the chair with his legs crossed and on top of the desk and his hands behind his head, and started whistling. Irika had a tick mark on his forehead. He saw that not only was the little bastard sitting over there smugly, he was whistling. Irika thought, why that rotten little? Wait, where the hell did he get those shades? However, he contained his anger. He gave his best to maintain a straight face and then said, "All right, Naruto, attitude aside, I give you full points for the substitution as you were able to catch me off guard and substitute with me. But now why don't you get your ass off that chair and come do the clone jutsu so that we could get this over with?" Naruto said, "Well then, here goes nothing. Water style, water clone jutsu." Immediately water had risen and formed 2 clone. Irika was amazed at what Naruto did. Mizuki shouted, "Water style. Since when were you able to do elemental manipulation? And not only that, you were able to form 2 clones." Irika had the same question. "Yeah, Naruto, tell me how you know this jutsu?" Naruto smiled and said, "That's a secret, sensei. Besides, I have done as you asked. Aren't you going to pass me?" Mizuki then turned towards Irika and asked, "Is it all right to pass him even if he didn't do the standard clone jutsu?" Mizuki may have hidden it well, but Naruto could see the small amount of anger and frustration on his face. It was almost as if he didn't want Naruto to pass. However, before Naruto could speak in support of actions, Irika beat him to it by speaking first. The standard clone jutsu was only accepted to be taught in the academy because of its low chakra requirements. However, since Naruto was able to pull of an even advanced technique, which requires elemental manipulation, I see no reason in failing him. True, it may be a bit unusual, but the requirements of passing was to perform a clone jutsu. It didn't specify which one. Mizuki couldn't argue with that logic and nodded his head. Irika smiled and said, "All right, Naruto, you pass. Congratulations. You are now a genin." Naruto smiled at that. and collected a headband from a reluctant Mizuki. He then said, "Hell yeah." Irika then spoke with him. "Now that you have passed, we may need to talk a little about your earlier stunt." Naruto stopped dancing and then grinned. "Naya naya na? You can't do anything to me, sensei. I am not longer part of the academy." Irika grinned and said, "You may have passed, but right now you are still my student as your results haven't been given and recorded yet, which means that I am still your charge." Naruto gulped. Irika then said, "I want you to go out and pull the weed on the academy's ground as punishment." Naruto said, "That's easy." Irika said, "Oh, is that right? Then I want you to do it while wearing 30 kilograms on your body." Come on, sensei. No compromises." Mina. Sometime later, Naruto was happily going back home from the academy when Mizuki approached him. Mizuki said, "Naruto, can you come here for a moment?" Naruto replied, "What is it, Mizuki-sensei?" Internally, Naruto thought, "What is he hiding?" Mizuki said, "Naruto, while you did pass the exam, it was still unconventional. Irika and I talked to some of the higher-ups about it and decided to pass you." Naruto said, "Then there's no problem, is there?" Mizuki then added, "But there's a condition." Naruto asked, "What is it?" Mizuki smiled and then told, "The condition is that you can pass only if you can do a mission so that we know for sure you are not a liability on the field." Naruto asked, "What mission?" Mizuki then said the details of the special mission. Naruto understood what Mizuki was smoking. He then nodded to Mizuki and said, "All right, sensei, this will be easy." However, Mizuki was serious now. "Be serious, Naruto. What you are doing is important. Here, this is a map that shows the location of the scroll and also the guard duty." Naruto looked at it and thought, "Wonder how he got it." Mizuki then said, "All right, you know where to meet me, don't you?" Naruto said, "Yeah, midnight at the abandoned hut in the woods." Mizuki then shooed him and said, "Off you go." And Naruto, "Remember, failure is not an option." Naruto nodded his head and then left. 2 hours before midnight, Naruto was waiting for Mizuki with the scroll at the spot where they were supposed to meet. He then thought, "Well, I am going to wait for a while. Why not learn a new jutsu?" He then opened the scroll and read the first jutsu. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Man, why did it have to be a clone jutsu? Naruto, however, didn't complain and read the details of the jutsu. He was hooked into it once he read that the user retains whatever memory his clones had acquired after it dispelled. This made him think, "Wait, it retains memory, including muscle memory. Then I can use it to train more techniques." The training nut job was just given his weapon of mass destruction with the instruction manual. He struggled with it in the beginning, but soon got the hand of it once he understood the core principle. It was then he noticed. "Irika-sensei." "Naruto, what have you done?" Naruto replied, "What have I? How the hell did you find me? Why are you here?" Irika responded, "Why the hell did you steal the scroll? Do you realize how much trouble you are in right now?" Naruto responded, "Damn it. Irika-sensei, wait. It's not what it looks like." Mizuki-sensei was trying to dash. Naruto then immediately jumped and tackled Irika-sensei while shouting, "Look out." Mizuki said, well, it seems Irika found you before I could, Naruto. Such a shame." Irika looked astonished and asked, "Mizuki?" Mizuki replied, "I am sorry, Irika, but I am going to need Naruto to hand over the scroll." Irika then understood what it was all about. He said, "You traitor! How could you betray this village? How could you betray your own home?" Mizuki said, "Me betraying the village? This village betrayed me when they put me in charge of teaching at the academy instead on the field. I put all that effort and painstakingly made many sacrifices, and for what? To teach some snot-nosed naive brats still wet behind the ears on how to be a shinobi." Mizuki then continued with his prattle. "However, that will no longer be so. Once I have that scroll and give it to that personage, all the dreams I have and had will be fulfilled. So Naruto, give me the scroll." Naruto said no. Mizuki said, "Don't make me hard on this for you. Well, I don't think it would be any more hard on it for you than you are already now. Though tell me, Do you know the secret why that everyone treats you the way they do? Irika said, Enough, Mizuki. Stop it. That's forbidden. Naruto acted as if he was unaware and asked, What do you mean? Treat me the way they do. What secret? Irika said, Naruto, don't listen to him. Mizuki said, The truth is that the Kyuubi that attacked the Ville Dash. It was then Mizuki was put on the ground on all of his fours, and above his body was two umbu. The one on top said, I think you have said enough, Mizuki. I am taking you in for treason. Mizuki said, How? Irika looked on astonished like Mizuki as Naruto then said, What? Do you think I would be so dumb that I would fall for your blatant manipulation? Flashback. The problem with Mizuki was that he was underestimating Naruto's intelligence. He went straight to the Hokage's tower before entering his office with a protesting receptionist. Hey, you can't walk in like that. Old man, we need to talk. The Hokage was there with 3 jounin in the office, 2 male and a female. Naruto noted that one of them had a gravity-defying silver hair and a mask that covered his entire face, and the other had a black hair and a beard on his face. The female was a beautiful woman with a white and red outfit and had glossy black hair which came down to her waist. She also had red eyes. Sarutobi, who saw Naruto, said, Well, as you can see, Naruto, I am in the middle of something. Naruto then ignored the looks from the jounin, asking him to leave. He said, Are you sure you don't want to hear this? Even if it concerned a traitor plotting to steal the scroll of sealing. Sarutobi immediately turned serious along with the other jounin. The silver-haired one asked, What do you mean? Naruto then passed on the map to the 3rd Hokage and said, One of the instructors in the academy, Mizuki, tried to manipulate me into stealing that scroll under a lame excuse. Unfortunately for him, I am not so dumb enough to believe that. Sarutobi then turned towards the trio of jounin and said, We can talk about our issue later. The jounin nodded and left the room. Sarutobi then asked, Do you know where Mizuki is? Naruto grinned and said, Well, I don't know where he is right now, but I can tell you where he would be. Sarutobi knew what Naruto was implying and then asked in resignation, What do you want? Naruto grinned even more before asking, Well, I want to learn a powerful ninjutsu. I am sure you can spare 2 A-ranked ninjutsu. Sarutobi said, 2 C-ranked. Naruto frowned and said, 1 A rank and a C rank. Sarutobi didn't budge on the offer and said, I will give you a B-ranked ninjutsu, and we call it a deal, all right. I can find him without your help, only that it would make a lot more noise than necessary other than risking him run away. Naruto grinned and said, All right, deal. You are the best, old man. Sarutobi shook his head and smiled. He then said, However, I need to draw out Mizuki, and for that I am going to need you to go to that spot with a fake scroll, but with your reward on it, so don't lose it. Meanwhile, I will raise the alarm saying you stole the scroll. Once you are there, you don't need to do anything. The umbu will take care of the rest. Naruto nodded his head and said, Deal. Back to present. Mizuki was apprehended by the umbu and taken to the interrogation wing so that they could find out who he was working for. Naruto was brought in along with Irika to explain the situation to the Hokage with one of the umbu. A few moments later, once the report was done, Sarutobi nodded his head and said, All right, you are now dismissed. Good work, both of you. Naruto was about to leave when Sarutobi called him. Naruto, can you stay here a moment? Naruto looked at Irika, who nodded his head. Naruto then stayed behind as Irika left. Sarutobi then said, I want all umbu to leave this room. The umbu did as he commanded and left the room quietly. Naruto then asked, What is it, old man? Sarutobi asked, More than me. I believe you have some of your own first, don't you? Naruto nodded and asked, What was it that Mizuki said about the Kyuubi? Sarutobi then said to Naruto, The truth is, Naruto, the secret that Mizuki said wasn't supposed to be revealed to you until you are old enough to understand, but I believe you are ready to know. Naruto then listened on to Sarutobi, telling him his burden. Sarutobi then added, I say all this, but it seems you have already realized, have you? Naruto seemed surprised at Sarutobi figuring him out. He asked, How did you dash? Sarutobi then said, You did hide it very well now. I would have believed you if it weren't for me observing most you the time while you were in the village. Saratobi then added, I also know about your progress in your training. The only reason I let you be for now was because I was sure that you didn't bode ill will towards the village from our interactions these years. Though that has to come to an end now, as I no longer wish to be kept in the dark. He then started smoking his pipe. He asked, so I am giving you a chance here. Come clean. Naruto then started sweating. He thought, great. Now what? Chapter 6. Naruto was standing in the Hokage office with him, and the Hokage in front of him seated behind his desk, having his hands on his face, while his elbows stayed upright on the desk, giving an inquisitive look. I have given you a platform, Naruto-kun. Come clean, said Saratobi. Naruto was intensely sweating while thinking, damn it. What should I say? Think, Naruto. Think. Saratobi looked at Naruto with a pipe in his hand. He then looked onto the boy who was getting nervous and tense easily, but he decided that he won't back off on this matter. He knew the boy never meant any harm to the village and only was training his own self. However, he never knew the purpose of why he was training. On the surface, Naruto told that he trained to become Hokage someday, but deep inside, he must have another reason as to why he was doing so. Saratobi considered probing the boy earlier on when he discovered his growth. He didn't know the exact level of where Naruto was in terms of strength, but knew that he was around high Chunin or at the level of special Jounin at best. However, he decided against it as he wanted to approach the matter carefully and allow Naruto some space so that he doesn't feel cornered and affect his loyalty towards the village. Naruto then let out an intense sigh and said, I guess nothing passes by your eyes, does it, old man? Saratobi then smoked his pipe. He sighed and said, Naruto-kun, I am Hokage, and as you may already know by now that as the leader of the village, I hold some duties and responsibilities towards it. I need to know everything that goes on within it, as there is a chance it may or may not compromise the security of the village. However, that doesn't mean that I see you as a threat. You are a part of this village as much as any other who claims to live here. I merely wish to know what had happened for you to train at such a rapid pace. Naruto remained silent and looked at Saratobi. He thought of revealing the fact that he was aware of his heritage to him, but remembered the warning that Azura gave. Thus he sighed and thought, I'm sorry, old man, but I need you to be in the dark a little while longer. Saratobi asked, well? Naruto sighed and then said, 5 years ago, I became aware of the Kyuubi's presence inside me when I found it out behind a big cage in my mindscape. I don't know why I was pulled in or what I was thinking about. It happened completely by accident. The Kyuubi had ultimately explained to me what I am and who sealed it within me. It was then I became aware of my status as its jailer. Saratobi didn't say anything while silently listening on to what Naruto said. Naruto then added, I understood why the villagers ostracized me and hated my guts. However, it didn't quell my rage against them. However, I found out soon it was foolish to hate them for this issue. I knew that it was a burden I was meant to carry, and so I accepted it. I am not a scapegoat for them to vent their frustrations, but at the same time I can understand their anger, even if it was misdirected. I know that the 4th Hokage chose me for a reason. He gave me the duty to protect this village in his stead. Thus I started to train so that one day I might surpass him and fulfill the duty he had given me. I don't care if the village comes to hate me or like me, but I know that there are some people here that are worth fighting for. People like you, Tsuchiyaji-san, Ayame-san, Irika-sensei, Hinata. All of you are my reason to become strong so that one day I may protect you. My loyalties may not be towards the village itself. However, it lies within those individuals I consider worth protecting in this village. Saratobi sighed and then took of his hat. He then came out of his seat and then came in front of Naruto. It was his next action that surprised and frightened Naruto at the same time. Saratobi bowed to Naruto and then said, I'm sorry for being weak to not protect you, Naruto-kun. It is my failure as a leader that this misfortune has befallen you. Naruto was stunned at the action. He hurriedly and frantically said, Stop, Ji-san. What are you doing? An elder is never supposed to bow in front of the younger generation. Besides, it isn't your fault that this happened. It is the villagers who are at fault, not you. Naruto looked down as he said that. Saratobi then got up as he noticed that he was making Naruto uncomfortable. The elderly man then said, "Regardless, it's my fault as the leader that caused you this grievance." Naruto sighed and then said, "It's all right, Ji-san. You have always been kind to me and watched over me since I was little. Even if you had the village's interests in mind when you were using the umbu to watch me, you wouldn't have checked up on my progress and mental health yourselves if you didn't care. You could have just assigned another caretaker if you wanted to. You have no need to apologize, and I have no right to ask you for that apology after all you have done." Saratobi smiled at the maturity shown by Naruto. The old man then looked at a portrait of the fourth Hokage on the wall and then thought, "You would have been proud to see how your son has grown up, Minato-kun." Naruto followed Saratobi's eyesight and then saw the picture of his father. He thought, "Dad." It was then he asked something he had on his mind. He wanted to test Saratobi on something and asked, "Ji-san?" "Yes, Naruto-kun." "Why do you think he chose me? Of all the children in the village, why me?" Saratobi looked at Naruto and had a conflicted expression on his eyes. He thought, "No, not yet. He's not ready." He then said, "I don't know, Naruto-kun. I ask myself the same thing every time I see you. However, I believe he saw something great in you, a tenacity to fight against the currents of what society has set for you." He then added, "I know not why he chose you, Naruto-kun, but I knew that he had a strong faith in you, one strong enough to place the burden of an entire village on your shoulders when you were barely a day old." Naruto looked at the portrait of Minato and thought, "Father." His mind then began to reminisce the short moments he spent along with his father. Flashback. A 7-year-old Naruto was standing along with Azura and Minato. He was so confused right now. He wondered for a moment whether it was all a dream, whether was it just his mind playing tricks on him. For a moment he believed it to be so, and then pinched his cheek so hard. However, the pain was so real, and at the same time not so real as he was still in his mind. Minato, who noticed the antics of Naruto, smiled and laughed. Naruto, who saw that, pouted and then shouted, "Why are you laughing?" Minato gave a wry smile at that, and then said, "I am sorry, Naruto. I know you are very confused right now, but rest assured all will be explained." Naruto asked, "Huh? Wait, how does the fourth Hokage know my name?" Minato smiled and said, "I know your name because I was the one who named you, Naruto." Naruto looked at him while Minato continued, "I know you because you are my son." Naruto looked shocked. He then took some time to digest the information before asking, "I am your son?" Minato nodded. Naruto then asked, "That means you're my father?" Minato once again nodded. Naruto then further added, "The fourth Hokage is my father. The fourth Hokage is my father." Naruto looked down for a while. Minato saw that and became concerned. He then asked, "Is something wrong, Naruto? Are you hurt?" Naruto then began to tremble as chuckles soon came out from his being while he continued to look down. The chuckles then slowly grew larger and larger before it started to frighten Minato. He then asked, "Naruto?" Naruto then tackled Minato with a teary face. However, in the midst of the tears, one can notice the huge smile he had on his face. He then said slowly, "I finally know who my Otis-san is. I have a father." Minato, who was surprised by the sudden hug from the 7-year-old, then noticed the wet tears on his body. He was hurt, but at the same time joyful at finally getting accepted by his son. However, the words Naruto spoke cut him deeper than steel. It was then he realized something. He didn't know who his parents were. "I know that Lord Third may have done it so that he can protect him. But even then, I have failed him miserably as a father." He knew that he had a lot to make up for, but sadly he didn't have the time. He sighed and returned the hug while thinking, "Forgive me, Naruto. I don't deserve to be your father. However, let me enjoy this embrace and love you give me one last time before I shatter your image of me. This is going to hurt you very much, Naruto." He then sighed and then looked at the impassive Azura. He then separated from the hug and looked at a pouting 7-year-old Naruto. He smiled and ruffled his head. Naruto, who got his head ruffled, gave him a pure childlike smile. It was then Naruto said, "I finally have a father, and it is the fourth Hokage. The village will be over the moon at the fact that the fourth Hokage is not dead. I can't wait to tell my classmates at the academy at what an awesome father I have." Minato, who heard that, winced at what Naruto said. He then sighed and then said, I don't think that is possible, Naruto. Naruto, who was jumping around in joy, came to an abrupt stop. He then looked at Minato and asked, "Why? Aren't you inside me just like the Kyuubi?" Minato sighed and shook his head. Minato continued, "No, Naruto. What you see here is a projection inside your mind, just like Azura-san. I am already dead and inside the Shinigami's stomach." Naruto, who heard that, turned sad and said, "Oh." Minato said, "I'm sorry, Naruto." Naruto shook his head and then said, "No. What matters is you are here. I am happy with just that." Minato was shocked at the maturity Naruto showed at his age. His pride of being a father couldn't be any higher, even though he knew that he didn't play any part in his son's growth. He said, "I am so proud of you, son." Thanks to San. Minato then became sad and sighed and said, "I have a lot to explain, don't I?" Naruto had a confused expression as to why his father had a sad expression. Azura interjected at this point and then said, "You can start as to why you have sealed Kurama inside Naruto-kun. It was you, wasn't it?" Naruto looked at him with a disbelieving expression. Minato sighed and then nodded his head. "Yes. I was the one who sealed him inside Naruto." Naruto's mind was officially broken. He then took the information in his mind and all the questions and queries he had. Father was overwhelmed by the range of emotions on his being. All he could utter was, "Why? Why me?" Minato, who saw the inner turmoil within his son, could only say, "It is because you are my son." Naruto asked, "It is because I am your son?" Minato nodded his head and said, "I sealed the Kyuubi inside you because I believe that you are the only person who are worthy of it. I believed in you because you are my son, and I knew that you would be strong enough to help the village when the time is right." Naruto, who heard that explanation, became silent. However, Minato continued, "You have grown a lot, Naruto. I know that what I have done to you may be harsh." Naruto then pounced at Minato's torso and started throwing punches at him left and right while crying. He then said, "Harsh? Harsh. The villagers all hate me, Dad. They always call me freak, demon child, and thing. They say things that hurt a lot more than any beating they could deliver me. They ignore me and don't let their kids play with me. Do you have any idea on how that feels? Do you? I am always alone." Minato can only remain silent as Naruto continued to cry and speak his bit. Naruto continued to bawl before he felt a warm wrap around his body. Minato came by and closed him in a hug. He then heard him say, "There, there. It's all right, Naruto. It's all right. I am with you now. I am always with you." Naruto couldn't help but reciprocate the hug as he continued to sob in sadness. Azura just watched the interaction between Naruto and Minato. He knew that the father and son had needed their much-required privacy and father-son moment, but they were on a timer there, and there is a lot to be explained. However, when he looked at Naruto, his heart softened and thought, maybe giving them a little more time wouldn't be so bad. Naruto and Minato stayed like that for a while. Once Naruto became calm, Minato separated from him and said, "I'm sorry I put you through that, Naruto." Naruto shook his head and said, "It's all right too, San. I forgive you." To a 7-year-old Naruto, all was forgiven when his father consoled him. He knew that his father may have done a lot of wrong against him, but he was never one to hold a grudge against someone who already asked for forgiveness. Besides, he can't hold a grudge against the only father he has, can he? Minato, who heard that, smiled and said, "Thank you, son." Naruto smiled at him. Azura once again interjected, "While I hate to interrupt the moment here, we don't have a lot of time left. I think it's better you answer the questions while we can." Minato gave a wry smile at Naruto and said, "I didn't plan on meeting Naruto until he was a little older. Believe me that this was a rather sudden surprise, though I don't regret meeting him now. All right, Azura-san, ask me away." Azura nodded his head and asked, "Well, I believe both me and Naruto-kun here would like to know why you sealed Kurama inside him. What happened to the woman Kurama was sealed in before?" Minato said, "The woman whom the Kyuubi Kurama was sealed in before was my wife and Naruto's mother, Kushina Uzumaki." Naruto asked, "I have a mother?" Minato smiled and said, "Yes. Naruto, you do." Naruto asked, "Can I meet her?" Minato shook his head and said, "No, not right now. But you will surely meet her when you are older. I made sure of it. Naruto was disappointed but still gave a nod and said, "Okay." Minato wryly smiled, and then continued on to tell the tale of what happened on October 10th. Both Naruto and Azura didn't interrupt him as he said his tale. He then finished the tale by saying, "And that's it. I don't know what happened after I performed the Reaper Death Seal." Azura nodded his head. "I see. So there still exists a person that has the ability to control someone like Kurama." Minato nodded his head. "Yes, the person behind that mask is a danger, and I had no doubts that he will come after the Kyuubi after that event." He then turned to Naruto and said, "Naruto, I know that a lot of what is said here may confuse you, but I want you to know that you must become strong to defend yourself against this person." Naruto, who was silent all this time, nodded his head. Minato noticed that Naruto had something on his mind and thus asked him, "Do you want to ask me something, Naruto?" Naruto looked at Minato in the eye and then asked, I don't understand. I don't understand why you went so far for the village. Why did you do it for them?" Minato understood that Naruto held some underlying hatred for the villagers for the unfairness that was thrown at him. He knew that Naruto was still a child despite the maturity he had shown before. He then said, "Well, if not me, then who will Naruto?" Naruto answered, "Maybe someone else would have dash." Minato said, "And would you have let this person do it? Would you have let this person sacrifice his entire family for your safety, knowing that you could have done the same for him?" Naruto turned silent at that. He then answered, "No." Minato then continued, "And there you have your answer, Naruto. I had a duty towards the village as a Hokage. I was sworn to protect it with all I have. My life and the life of my family for the entire village consisting of countless families. An exchange that was hard on my heart, but an exchange I was willing to take because I knew it. However, I did so while expecting nothing in return. It was a service, and if I had the choice, I would do so all over again in a heartbeat. I know that you have some hatred for the villagers, Naruto, and you are justified in doing so. But don't let that grudge and hatred close your eyes to those who love you, Naruto. I know for a fact that there are some people who love you and care for you. Do you understand?" Naruto, who heard that, looked at his father with mixed emotions and then nodded his head. "I understand too, San." Minato nodded his head and smiled. "That's my boy." It was then Minato noticed something. He said, "I believe my time is ending." Azura knew what Minato was talking about and then nodded his head. Naruto looked on and asked, "You are leaving?" Minato then added, "Yes." Naruto looked sad at that and said, "It's not fair." Minato went forward to hug his son. However, Naruto rejected his advances. Minato shook his head and said, "I know that you are too young to understand the things I have done until now, Naruto, but there will come a time where you might understand me. Until then, you may hate me, scorn me, and reject me as a father. However, know that I always have and always will love you and be proud of you. You are my son always. Nothing will change that." Naruto, who heard that, once again had tears well up in his eyes. He said, "I love you too, Otis-san." Minato then said, "Then I believe that this is goodbye. Know that I will always be watching over you, always." Naruto then saw Minato fade away into a particle of light, and finally Naruto started crying like the child he was. Back to present. Naruto-kun. Naruto then noticed that Sarutobi looking at him with concerned eyes. He then hear him ask, "What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Is something the matter?" Naruto immediately shook his head and said, "It's nothing, Ji-san. Just remembered something." Sarutobi didn't question him any further and asked, "Well then, why don't we continue where we left off?" Naruto nodded his head and then said to Sarutobi the surface level of what he trained. He didn't reveal much about his heritage or the skills he acquired from it, and only told Sarutobi of the techniques he mastered from the library. Naruto hid most of the details, including the place where he trained, and just answered that it was merely outside the village. Sarutobi, being already satisfied with what he has acquired, didn't ask him any further, as he knew that Naruto's loyalties, while weak, was still towards the village. He was sure that the plan he had in mind will only foster it further. Thus they went on to speak about mundane things for a while before their conversation came to an end. Sarutobi dismissed him and told him that his abilities will be kept secret from the others, and he will do his best to assist him on that regard. Naruto thanked him and then went back to his house. He went and hit the bed at 3 in the morning. He thought, can finally relax for a while. Few days later, Naruto was going to the academy with a leaf headband on his forehead. Once he reached the class storeroom, he thought, well, this is it. Shinobi life, here I come. He then entered the classroom and slowly made his way to one of the empty seats. He noticed that a lot of students arrived early than he did. He noticed that Shikamaru was napping away like usual, and Choji was beside him, who was munching on potato chips. He noticed that behind his seat was the class topper and the publicly acclaimed, well acclaimed by his fangirls, as the cool guy, Sasuke Uchiha aka Mr. Hotshot. Everyone had praised him as the last Uchiha and a prodigy in his own right. However, Naruto knew that Mr. Hotshot was not that great of a prodigy after learning the likes of what his brother had been. He knew the history behind the Uchiha clan massacre and how it had changed the duck, but by eavesdropping on some of the shinobi who were talking about it. He pitied Sasuke and at the same time felt sympathetic to him because he was in the same situation as he was, but all of that had been thrown to the trash due to the superiority complex shown by Mr. Hotshot. Thus, Naruto maintained minimal interactions with the guy, but that didn't stop him from having a petty rivalry on a lot of issues. He knew that Sasuke felt the same way about him. Sasuke noticed Naruto looking at him and snorted. Naruto snorted back and then moved his eyesight away to find Hinata at one of the desks. He saw her and waved at her while smiling. She saw his gaze upon her and waved back. It was then a loud voice interrupted him. Huh, Naruto? What are you doing here, man? This class is for the graduates. Ain't no way a loser like you passed. Isn't that right, Akamaru? Arf. Naruto noticed and looked at the source of the voice. He saw that it was Kiba along with his Ninkin Akamaru. Naruto thought, huh man, why did this guy have to be so annoying? Naruto always found Kiba to be annoying. However, he was still one of those people that talked to Naruto from time to time and treated him quite normally, so Naruto just ignored his annoying habits. He then said, what do you think is the thing I am wearing on my forehead? Can't you see, or is the filth gathered in your eyes from the years of not taking a bath started to blind you? Seriously, when was the last time you took a bath, dude? Aren't you supposed to have a good nose? Poor Akamaru. He has to tolerate your stinking mess all the time. Ain't that right, Akamaru? Asked Naruto as he showed a treat to Akamaru. Arf, said Akamaru and wagged his tail. Naruto passed on the treat to Akamaru and whispered, nice doing business with you. Everyone in the class got a good laugh at Kiba. Meanwhile, Kiba looked at Akamaru. Why, you gluttonous little tray dash. However, they were interrupted by a loud noise that came from outside the classroom. Naruto turned to find out what was going on, but instantly regretted it as soon as he saw who it was that opened the door. Oh great, not the fangirl fight again. He saw that both Ino and Sakura had opened the door and arrived at the same time. They then turned to fight each other for getting the empty seat beside Mr. Hotshot. It soon turned out to be all the fangirls in the classroom that were fighting for that seat. Naruto and the boys, minus Sasuke, just looked on the occurrence with a sigh. They all then turned to Sasuke and gave him a look of pity while shaking their heads. If Sasuke was pissed at the pity he was shown, he didn't express it on his face. Naruto sighed. Seriously, if those two could put a lid on their fangirl tendencies and more effort into their physical training, they would be excellent shinobi. He then saw Hinata and thought, man, thank God Hinata isn't like that. He once again turned his focus back to Sakura and Ino. His interaction with the pair has been minimal, if not none. He knew that Sakura was one of those girls that had a prejudice against him for being the class's clown. Well, the entire class thought of him as an idiot and a loser, so he didn't complain. Ino, on the other hand, was a totally different case. While she interacted with Naruto properly like Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba, she always did belittle him, and like any other fangirl, compared him to Sasuke and started gushing over the duck butt. His thoughts then came on to poor Sasuke. He then looked back at Sasuke. He wondered, seriously, what do these girls see in this emo? The guy is really so depressing. It was then an excited boy behind Sasuke decided to laugh and push the duck, but from behind using his elbow. Wow, really? Sasuke was taken by surprise and was immediately launched to the front as he stumbled directly onto Naruto. Smuch. The entire class was silent now. Everyone looked onto the scene they were witnessing with awe and silence. It was the first time Naruto ever kissed someone. It was the first time he had kissed someone on the lips, and it had to be fucking Sasuke. The pair released from each other and started vomiting. Naruto shouted, "Hey, what's the deal, asshole?" However, Sasuke didn't respond as he was too busy vomiting from the horrible memory he had been provided. Naruto looked on for an explanation, but immediately felt something. He thought, my danger senses are tickling. He looked back to find a furious crowd of female girls all cracking their knuckles. He thought, "Shit. Naruto. Wait, why are you guys targeting me?" It was he who did it. Poor Naruto. His arguments were made moot as the girls launched their attacks at him, and he was beaten black and blue. Ouch. Stop. Stop. Huh, Hinata. Why are you joining in? No, not the face. Not the face. Unfortunately, his pleas fell on deaf ears. Meanwhile, all the other guys could only watch on and feel pity for our unfortunate protagonist, as he was beaten by unrighteous and unhinged female fury from the fangirls and from the silent girl who had beaten Naruto for not being her first kiss and giving it away to someone else. Sometime later, Iruka came inside the classroom and found Naruto to be all beaten up, but he knew better than to ask what was going on as he figured that Naruto must have done something. Instead, he went on like usual and started announcing, "Well, congratulations to all of you. You are all now Genin. I am proud of each and every one of you for coming so far, and I hope you all become excellent shinobi. Now then, each have been assigned to a jounin who will lead a squad of 3 Genin. Your team will be tasked with completing missions given to you by the villagers for a commission. I will now announce the teams each of you have been assigned to." Naruto listened in on as Iruka started off from Team 1 until his turn came. Team 7 will be led by Jounin Kakashi Hitaki. The members are Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto groaned about his assigned team, while Sakura cheered that she had been lucky enough to be assigned with Sasuke. Sasuke, being Sasuke, didn't say anything but just kept his usual stoic face. Naruto thought, great. I get the emo and the emo's fangirl. What horrible luck. He then heard the rest of the team assignments. He saw that Hinata was kind of disappointed but still smiled, although she did show some concern towards Naruto. Naruto figured she must be talking about his teammates and just shook his head at her and mouthed, "It's fine." Hinata was reluctant but still nodded her head. Naruto then thought, now, I wonder how our Jounin sensei will be. Kakashi Hitaki. Why does that name sound familiar? Sometime later, Naruto was tapping his fingers on the desk looking annoyed. He saw his teammates and believed that they must be thinking the same thing. He's late. Naruto had enough of it and thought of doing a silly punishment to the Jounin. He went forward and took a duster from the teacher's desk. He then placed the duster on the sliding door. Sakura said, "What are you doing, Naruto?" "Teaching our new sensei a lesson on tardiness." "No way. He's a Jounin and wouldn't fall for it." As if on cue, a silvery white-haired Jounin came by a few moments later. His entire face was covered with a mask except his left eye. The duster fell on him. A few moments of silence was shared between the three as they saw what had happened. They all thought, this guy's a Jounin. Kakashi looked on to his new batch of students and said, "My first impression of you guys is that you are a bunch of idiots." All three were annoyed by the way Kakashi worded his sentence. However, he then continued on, "Meet me at the rooftop." They all saw him shunshin, leaving only a few leaves behind. Naruto and the others just went normally like a bunch of greenhorns to the rooftop of the academy. They all sat for a while before Kakashi decided to break the silence. "Well, then why don't you guys start off with an introduction? Your goals, your hobbies, your likes and dislikes." Naruto asked, "Why don't you show us a demonstration, sensei, so we know what to do?" Kakashi started off, "Me? Well, the name's Kakashi Hitaki, things I like and things I hate. I don't feel like telling you. Well, my goals for the future? Never really thought about it. My hobbies? I have lots of hobbies, but you are too young to know about them." Sakura, who heard that, said to the other two of her peers, "Well, that was totally useless. All we got out of him was his name." Naruto nodded while Sasuke just gave a standard snort. Kakashi then said, "Well, why don't we start with you guys then? You, the blonde on the right." Naruto said, Well, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen of any kind and gardening. I don't like the fact that you have to wait for 3 minutes for preparing ramen. My hobby is eating different kinds of ramen and training. My dream for the future is to be the greatest Hokage there ever will be. Kakashi thought, well, he's grown up in a very interesting way. He then said, all right, you the pinky on the left, your turn. Sakura said while looking at Sasuke, me? I am Sakura Haruno. What I like. The person I like is blushes. My hobbies are blushes. My dream for the future is blush intensifies with squealing. Kakashi thought, great, another squealing fangirl. Why do they even want to be shinobi if all they came here for was chasing boys and get fashion advice? Naruto and Sasuke were somehow of the same opinion. And what about your dislikes? Asked Kakashi. Sakura said one word, Naruto. Naruto said sarcastically, gee, thanks for the great love you show me, Sakura. Sakura said, you're welcome. Kakashi said, all right, that's enough, and now you, the last one. Sasuke then said, my name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream because I will make it a reality. I am going to restore my clan and destroy a certain someone. While Sakura didn't know what Sasuke was talking about, Naruto and Kakashi understood. Naruto thought, well, it is logical for him to seek revenge after all that was done to him. But sheesh, the guy really needs a life other than that. Sakura thought, Sasuke is so hot. Kakashi frowned and thought, well, just as I thought. Kakashi then said, good. You are each unique and you have your own ideals. We will have our first mission tomorrow. Sakura asked, so what will be doing? Kakashi said, a survival exercise. Naruto asked, a survival exercise? I thought we already graduated to become shinobi and did that while in the academy. Sasuke and Sakura had the same doubt in mind. Kakashi then explained, figures you wouldn't know about it. Listen up, the test given in the academy was only a preliminary round. What we do here decides whether you guys are shinobi material or not. Naruto, who heard that, finally understood. I see. So they are weeding out the useless ones to minimize casualties on the mission. Kakashi said, it all depends on whether you pass or fail this test. If you pass, we remain as a team, but if you fail, you will be sent back to the academy. All of them became serious at that. Well then, I will see you three tomorrow. Meet me at Training Ground 7 at 6 a.m. Kakashi turned to leave, but however he stopped and then said, oh, and then one more thing. You better not have your breakfast tomorrow. If you do, then prepare to puke. He then left via Shunshin, leaving the three genin behind to their own thoughts. Naruto thought, well, let's leave it for tomorrow then. He then asked, hey, you guys want to hang out and discuss what we are going to do tomorrow before we leave? We still have the entire day. Sasuke snorted and said, who would want to hang out with a loser like you? Just don't get in my way tomorrow, dope. Sakura added on, yeah, just don't be a burden. Naruto grew indignant at the refusal and said, fine, suit yourselves. Naruto left the place and went back to his apartment. He trained for a while normally before night came and he hit the bed. He thought, well, let's see how you work, Mr. Copycat Ninja. The next day, Naruto arrived at the training ground a little later than the specified time by half an hour. He had his morning breakfast of milk and some rice as he figured that he needed the energy given by the carbs. He then went on to the specified meeting spot to find both Sasuke and Sakura already present. Sakura then said, you're late. Naruto argued, yeah? And what's the problem? Kakashi-sensei still hasn't arrived yet. Sakura wanted to argue but couldn't refute his statement. Sasuke just ignored the pair and closed his eyes. Naruto decided to get a lay of the land and observe their surroundings and found 3 wooden stumps. The entire area was filled with bushes and trees with some open ground in the middle. He also noticed a small stream flowing nearby. The trio waited for another 3 hours before Kakashi arrived there. Naruto knew about his tardiness as evident from yesterday's happening, but was still annoyed by how late he was. All 3 said, you're late. Kakashi added, I'm sorry, a black cat crossed my path and I had to take the long way around to reach this place. He looked at the three of them and found out that they aren't buying it. He then went on impassively. Well then, why don't we begin our test? Naruto asked. So what will you have us do? He took out 2 bells from his pocket. He then took out a timed clock and set it for noon. He then said, I have 2 bells on me. Your objective is to obtain the bells from me. Whoever doesn't have the bells by lunchtime will be tied to the stump and will be forced to watch me eat lunch. Sasuke thought with a scowl. So that's why. Sakura thought. He wanted us to skip breakfast so that he can make it harder on us. However, Naruto was grinning like normal. Kakashi noticed the looks of the other two, and by comparing them with Naruto, it was easy to figure out that Naruto already had breakfast. He asked, why did you have breakfast when I specifically told you not to eat? Naruto replied, well, I don't know, because it sounded stupid to not eat food when you are on a mission that doesn't permit you the time or luxury to have it so. Besides, what you gave was a suggestion and not an order. Kakashi thought, well, look at the cheek on him. But he does have a good head on his shoulders. Sakura thought, damn it, how did the class idiot figure it out, but not me? I am on a diet too. Sasuke had the same thoughts as Sakura as his superiority complex started acting up. Sakura then noticed something and asked, wait a minute, there are 3 of us. Why are there only 2 bells? Kakashi gave an eye smile and said, well, that way, at least one of you will fail to get a bell and get tied to the stump. That one will ultimately be disqualified and be sent back to the academy. The 3 turned serious at that. Kakashi then added on. Then again, all 3 of you can flunk. You can come at me with the intent to kill, which means that you can use all the weapons you have in your arsenal. Sakura said, wait a minute, those tools are dangerous. You can get hurt, sensei. Naruto thought, wow, talk about arrogance, or is she that ignorant? The guy is called a jounin for a reason. Kakashi then said, all right then, your time starts now. As soon as he said that, both Sasuke and Sakura created some distance and went into hiding in the bushes nearby, while Naruto just stood there impassive. Kakashi noticed Naruto but ignored him. He then took out a book which Naruto read as Ika Ika. Naruto wasn't bothered but asked, aren't you underestimating us a little too much, sensei? Reading a book while we are out to kill you. Kakashi said, I can ask the same of you, Naruto. Unlike your team mates who had the sense to get some distance, you just stayed there. Either you are confident you can take me on, or you are just plain stupid. Naruto said, well, it doesn't matter if we get some distance or not. There is a huge difference of class between a jounin and a genin. Even if we hit ourselves, it won't enhance our chances of catching you off guard. You can easily catch us with your speed alone. Kakashi thought, maybe he isn't so bad after all. He's thinking, that's a good sign. Naruto asked, I am curious, sensei. What's the point of this test? You can easily defeat the 3 of us with your power. Why go through all that effort by allowing us to prepare? Kakashi said, well, Naruto, if I said that, it wouldn't be a test in the first place. Naruto nodded his head and said, yeah, I agree. It was stupid of me to ask that. Any chance you can hand over that bell if I ask you nicely? Kakashi said, nope. Naruto added, too bad. It seems I had to use force. Kakashi then noticed Naruto getting in a stance ready to attack him, but was caught off guard when he was grabbed from behind. He noticed a shadow clone behind him. Naruto said, sorry, sensei, but that bell is mine. However, the grabbed on Kakashi poofed into smoke and was replaced with a log. Naruto thought, a substitution. Kakashi said, not bad. Using a shadow clone to sneak up behind me while the main one distracted me. Basic strategy, but very well executed. Naruto sighed and said, well, I had to try. He then moved forward to attack Kakashi while creating a bunch of shadow clones. However, all of his attacks were evaded. Naruto thought, I guess that's enough. Now I know for sure what he wants. Naruto then retreated into the woods much to the surprise of Kakashi, but Kakashi didn't bother and continued reading his book. Meanwhile, Sasuke, who saw what happened, was budding with jealousy. When did the dope get so good? He couldn't even perform a basic clone jutsu back in the academy. He then heard, hey team. He turned to find Naruto beside him. Sasuke asked, what do you want, dope? Naruto said, I think we need to work together. You already saw how strong he is. He's a jounin, and no way can we get him if we work alone, but with the three of us, we may have a chance. While Sasuke agreed with Naruto internally, his pride will not let him agree to Naruto. He said, I refuse. You were the one who was weak, not me. I have more than enough confidence to do it myself. Don't get in my way. Naruto then said, Hey Dash. However, Sasuke would have none of it, as he already went on to attack Kakashi. Naruto said, Fine. Suit yourself. He thought, maybe Sakura. No, that girl would only follow my plan if Sasuke agrees. He waited for a while as he watched on Kakashi battling Sasuke. He then noticed that he took an opportunity to get away from Sasuke, using a substitution, and attacked Sakura using a Jinjutsu, which was highly effective on her. Naruto pinched his nose and thought, great. One low-powered Jinjutsu, and she's already down for the count. Man, I knew she was weak when it came to practical skills, but seriously? This weak? Naruto then watched on Kakashi thrashing around Sasuke after Sasuke used a number of techniques on him once he snuffed Kakashi out of hiding. Kakashi then pulled Sasuke into the ground and trapped him and left the area. Since Naruto was well hidden even for a jounin, Kakashi couldn't find him that easily and went in further, away from the area. Naruto approached Sasuke while sighing, but Sakura beat him to it. Sakura, who didn't watch the battle as she had already been placed in a Jinjutsu by Kakashi in the middle, once again screamed and fainted as she saw Sasuke, who was 5 foot in the ground with only his head visible above. Naruto just sighed and then said, You change your mind now? Sasuke looked disgruntled and just gave a short sound. HN. Naruto said, Excellent. Let me help you get out of there once I wake up Sakura from whatever it was that she fainted from. A few minutes later, Kakashi was wandering about as he thought, the kid hides very well. Where could he be? He then heard the whirling of a shuriken and dodged it. He then thought, seems he decided to stop hiding. He then saw Naruto attack him from a blind corner using a kunai. Kakashi blocked his attack using a kunai of his own. Nice try, but better luck next time. Naruto, however, didn't give up and immediately formed a pair of shadow clones and then attacked Kakashi head-on. Kakashi said, Shadow clones? Again? Haven't you learned anything in our previous encounter? Attacking head-on won't work, kid. Naruto said, Oh? Is that so? Kakashi then noticed that something was wrong and followed Naruto's line of sight. He saw that Sasuke was ready with a tiger hand seal on him. He thought, well, they are finally working together. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Kakashi dodged the incoming fireball his way, but was immediately relentlessly attacked by Naruto and his shadow clones. Kakashi dodged each and every one of them. He then saw Sasuke throw some shuriken. He dodged once again. The trio soon took their battle to open ground. Naruto and Sasuke looked exhausted, while Kakashi looked as if he hadn't even broken a sweat. Naruto had only one clone left. He saw that the two Narutos and Sasuke came to attack him. However, he dodged both of them. However, to his surprise, both Jinin each caught one of his limbs and then said, Now Sakura. Kakashi then noticed that Sakura come from hiding and approach him from the front to take the bells from him. He thought, Good one, but not so bright are you. He easily performed a substitution to remove himself from their grasp. Kakashi then heard the bell signifying it was noon. He said, Well, good try, team. But it seems your time has run out and unfortunately none of you have a bell. Naruto then said, Oh, is that right? Kakashi then noticed that the 2 bells were each in Naruto and Sasuke's hand. Kakashi looked at his hip to find the bells gone. He asked, How did you dash? Naruto said, Well, you never did notice the Jinjutsu casted on you, did you? Kakashi finally understood that the Sakura he saw was only an illusion. The real one was along with the other 2 boys smiling with her hands holding a peace sign. Naruto explained, The one in front of you, as you may have figured out, was only an illusion, but you would have not properly noticed it in the heat of battle. The real one was actually behind you all this time, transformed as a rock. Kakashi thought, I see. The 2 relentlessly attacked me and led me here by the nose where Sakura was already hidden. Since I was distracted by the pair, I didn't notice her behind me. A Jinjutsu was cast on me to make it so that I assumed the real one was coming from the front while she was actually behind me all along. They executed their plan flawlessly. Naruto grinned and said, "So we passed, right?" Kakashi smiled and said, "Well, not so fast. I see only two of you holding the bell, not Sakura. So she has to be tied to the stump and sent back to the academy." Sasuke snorted and said, "Why don't you cut the act? Getting the bells were never part of the test, were they?" Kakashi said, "Oh." Sasuke said, "It's so obvious. Sakura, you already figured it out, didn't you?" Sakura said, "Yeah. The bells were only a cover. You just wanted to test our teamwork, didn't you? The bells were made to divide us and make us work alone, as only two bells were there. And if you think about it, aren't Jinin assigned in three-man squads under a Jounin? There never has been a two-man squad. You made the test specifically for us to realize that we need to work as a team." Naruto, who heard it, nodded his head in agreement. Kakashi, who heard that, sighed and said, "And here I thought I could just fail all of you and sent you back to the academy if I could fool you into turning on one of your teammates. It would have made my work a lot easier." The trio were annoyed at what Kakashi said, but then they saw him give an eye smile behind his mask and said, "But congratulations, you three. All of you pass. You have very well exceeded my expectations and shown that you will be excellent shinobi." Naruto and Sakura cheered as Sasuke gave a rare smile on his face. Kakashi then heard the growling of the stomachs from both Sakura and Sasuke and said, "Well, why don't you two and I have our lunch while we just tie Naruto for the fun of it?" "Wait, what?" "Agreed," said Sasuke. "Yeah," said Sakura. "Why the hell are you guys so mean to me, god damn it?" A few hours later, as soon as the team had lunch, they figured they can celebrate for a while after making their team official. Soon evening came and Kakashi dispersed all of them. Sasuke and Sakura had left, but as soon as Naruto was about to leave, Kakashi said, "Can you hold a moment, Naruto?" Naruto waited and then asked, "What's up, sensei?" Kakashi then said, "I want to know the reason as to why you were holding back the entire time." Naruto said, "I don't know what you mean, sensei." Kakashi said, "The Hokage has said all about your abilities to me, Naruto. I know the truth." Naruto, who heard that, said, "Figures. But I don't blame him. You deserve to know the truth as you are my Jounin sensei, Inu-san." Kakashi, who heard that, was surprised. "How did you dash?" Naruto snorted and said, "What? Do you think that I wouldn't notice you watching me when I was little? Or did you think that I wouldn't know when I saw you yesterday at the academy, or even that time at the Hokage's office? Let me tell you something. You may have worn a mask to hide your identity, but that silvery white hair of yours along with that unique hairstyle is a dead giveaway. The Umbu mask may have a cool aesthetic and may intimidate your targets, but that's all there is to it. Your identity is still given away if you don't wear a cloak to cover the rest of your body." Kakashi, who heard that, sighed at the obvious blunder and said, "You're right about that. It's something that needs to be told to the Hokage." The two of them shared a few moments of silence before Kakashi asked, "So, tell me, why were you hiding your true strengths? We are your team now, right?" Naruto sighed and said, "While I can trust both Sasuke and Sakura with my life, I can't do the same with my secrets. Sasuke is not one to talk, but the same cannot be said for Sakura. I didn't want to show too much as it might invite a lot of eyes on me, and that invites too many headaches from the civilian council should they hear of it. Granted, they don't have any power over me now as the Hokage is the one responsible for me, but it doesn't mean that they won't give me any headaches in the future if I show that I have grown too strong in too little time without proper resources. They will start snooping around and start questioning my loyalty. One can never be too careful. Besides, isn't the first rule of being a shinobi all about deception? Thus, I believe that staying under the radar was the wiser decision." Kakashi heard that and understood what he was talking about. He then heard Naruto say, "Well, enough of that, Kakashi-sensei. Now that those two have gone away, it's time I showed you what I am really capable of, don't I?" He then closed the distance between Kakashi, who blocked an attack from him. Naruto then weaved through a bunch of hand seals and said, "Water style, water scythe, jutsu." Blades of water attacked Kakashi, who dodged them by a hair's breadth. He then heard Naruto say, "Well then, sensei, would you like to have this dance?" Kakashi was excited for a good battle as he had lost quite poorly on the last one. He thought, "Well, guess today isn't so bad after all." Chapter 7. It was a quiet day in the Hidden Leaf with not much happening midday. But our protagonists were doing a rather dangerous mission today. They were all in hiding and a few feet away from a tree. Sakura in particular was behind a fence. This is Raging Bubblegum speaking. Target is in sights, 5 meters from it. Permission to engage. Over. Amazing Maelstrom here along with Broody, ready to provide assistance to Raging Bubblegum. Alright then team, P-Porn Dude here. Size. You have permission to capture the target. And Naruto, you aren't picking the code names next time onward. Over. Seconded. Over. HN. It's amazing Maelstrom Sensei. And my names are perfect. Over. As soon as they said that, Sakura directly ran towards the tree and then jumped into it. She shouted, "Come here, furball." She caught the target who was unguarded, but she didn't prepare for what was to happen next. Ow, ow, ow. Stop scratching me, you little beast. However, that didn't stop the cat from doing that, and by chance it slipped from her hands when she was distracted. The cat ran towards the hole in the fence, but once it did, it noticed that it was a trap as Naruto was waiting on the other side with a cage. He said, "Got you now? Didn't we, you little furry?" The cat meowed and tried to scratch him, but he avoided attacks made on his face, and then said on the communicator, "Mission accomplished, Porn Dude. 1 Tora, the demon cat has been captured." Sasuke came from his hiding spot on the opposite side. Sakura came in fuming, looking at the cat with a vengeful face, for it had ruined hers. She said, "I would have killed the cat if it weren't for the fact it was a mission target." Naruto smiled and said, "Don't worry, Sakura. I am pretty sure the reward is worth all the scratching on your face." Sakura, who heard that, gave her best to make a scary face and said, "Huh? Do you want to substitute in place of the feline, Naruto?" Naruto immediately shut his mouth and put his hands in front his chest, waving at her. He then said, "Easy, Sakura. Easy, you know it was just a joke." Sakura replied, "One in poor taste." Sasuke responded by giving his usual snort and then a small smirk. Kakashi arrived at the spot and said, "All right, team, let's go back and collect the reward." Naruto then sighed and commented, "This better be the last of the tasks like this, sensei." Kakashi gave an eye smile and said, "We'll see." Later at the Hokage office, Squad 7 then watched Madame Shinji come by and collected the cat. The rookie team 7 saw the situation of the cat and then sympathized with how mistreated she was, but that sympathy went down the drain when they remembered how cumbersome it was to capture her. Sarutobi said, "Now then, for Squad 7 next mission, we have several available tasks. Among them, babysitting the chief counselor's 3-year-old, helping his wife do shopping, digging up potatoes dash." "No," interrupted Naruto. Sarutobi then looked at Naruto, who responded, "No more missions like this, old man. We already did a bunch of those things. Give us a real mission." Both Sasuke and Sakura, who were nearby, did not support him vocally, but internally they couldn't help but agree with Naruto about the menial tasks they were given. Irika, who was nearby, said, "How dare you? You are just a brand new genin with no experience. Like everyone else, you start off with simple missions and develop your skills to prove yourself." Naruto shouted back, "Are you serious? Babysitting is not a mission." Sarutobi sighed and replied, "Listen, many different kinds of requests come into our village every day, from babysitting to assassination. The shinobi are divided into various ranks. Below the Hokage are the Jounin, Chunin, and then the Genin. You know, I ate this miso ramen yesterday that was dash." However, Naruto didn't even bother to listen to Sarutobi and was in his own zone talking to others about ramen while sitting on the wooden floor. Sarutobi, who saw this, shouted, "Silence." Naruto snorted. Sarutobi saw this and sighed. He then said, "Why do you want a real mission as you quoted so bad?" Naruto replied, "How do we get experience if we are not given the platform to prove ourselves?" Sarutobi then looked at Kakashi, who sighed, but then nodded his head. The old Hokage then said, "All right then, since you want to prove yourselves so bad, I think it's time your squad gets a C-ranked mission. You lot are going to be bodyguards this time." Naruto was stunned for a moment. He then gave a grin and asked, "For real? So who are we protecting?" At that time the door opened, and came in a drunken old man carrying a bottle of sake. You lot are the ones I am paying for. You're just a bunch of kids. You don't look like much, especially you, the short one with the stupid look on his face, said the old man. Naruto ignored the insult and thought while grumbling, oh gee, my first C-ranked and I get a drunk lout. What a great mission this is turning out to be. Kakashi said to the man, we may not look like much, but we are trained for the occasion. I believe we will meet your requirements. The man then said, that is yet to be seen. Naruto calmed down and collected his thoughts. He asked, why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us where you need to go? The man nodded his head and said, the name's Tazuna, and I am a bridge builder, and our destination is the Land of Waves. The next day, Naruto and the team, along with Tazuna, left for the Land of Waves. The details of their mission was discussed, and their mission was to protect Tazuna from bandits on the way until they reached their destination. They moved along for some time before Naruto noticed something on the path. He saw that there was a puddle of water on the dirt path in the distance, and noticed that there was none other. He understood and thought, Jinjutsu. He then looked at Kakashi, who then nodded his head. Naruto looked at his teammates and observed. He saw that Sasuke was alarmed and ready to attack, while Sakura was carefree and was talking with Tazuna. Seems as if Sakura hasn't figured it out yet, thought Naruto. However, the squad moved as usual as there were no orders from Kakashi to stop. Naruto then noticed that the two rogue shinobi using Jinjutsu attacked Kakashi and chained him up before squeezing them to death. Kakashi fell down. Sakura went forward to protect the client along with him, while Sasuke engaged the two rogues. He saw that Sasuke immediately took down one while the other was about to pounce on him, only to be taken care of by Kakashi, who later revealed to have substituted. Kakashi said, good work, Sasuke, on taking care of our assailants. Naruto, Sakura, you did a pretty good job standing in front of Tazuna to protect him. Now to take care of our guests. Naruto looked on while Sakura gushed over Sasuke, all about being cool, while the hotshot came in front of him to gloat. Sasuke said, you doing okay? You scaredy cat. Naruto just smiled at Sasuke and said, I am doing fine, thanks for asking. Nice job doing the grunt work for us. Sasuke, who heard that, didn't expect the response, and thus just snorted. He didn't know that Naruto didn't engage the two rogue shinobi who he recognized as the Demon Brothers because the situation was already under control. He knew that Kakashi was just testing them from the beginning and thus left all the work to Sasuke while he just relaxed and watched on. He then thought, the Demon Brothers, last time I saw their bingo books, they were working along with Zabuza Momochi. It seems our client is not being completely honest with us, huh? This could turn bad for us. Kakashi finished sealing the two Demon Brothers and then said, good work. Now then, it's time you come clean here, Tazuna-san. You asked for protection detail against bandits or highwaymen, not shinobi. Once rogue shinobi are involved, the mission evolves into a whole new pay grade, way above what Jinin can do. You lying will not only allow us to ban you from contracting us, but also arresting you on false information provided in the mission details. Tazuna sighed and then said, I guess it had to come out sometime, hadn't it? He then said, you were right about me lying to you on the mission detail. I am sorry, but I couldn't do anything as I couldn't fork out any money for the B-ranked mission. Naruto asked, couldn't pay for the mission? What? Tazuna said, I am getting to that, but first you need to know what's going on in the Land of Waves before you understand. The Land of Waves is an island nation. We are a small nation that support ourselves with produce from the sea. It was a peaceful nation until he came. The one who seeks my life. He is a short and stout man, but he casts a long and deadly shadow on the nation. Kakashi asked, a deadly shadow? So who is it? Tazuna said, you may have heard of him. His name is Gato. Naruto knew who he was talking about, but Kakashi then raised an eyebrow and asked, Gato? Of Gato Shipping? The tycoon said to be one of the richest in the world. Tazuna nodded his head and said, the one and the same. While outside, he shows himself to be a shipping magnate with a respectable business. Behind that veil is the man who trades in drugs and contraband using gangs and ninja. He set his eyes on our nation 1 year ago. The Land of Waves is a small one, and the only way to trade or communicate with the outside world is by sea. Gato came and took control of our transport and shipping using his vast wealth. Anyone who stood in his way were disposed or just disappeared. In an island nation, a man who controls the sea controls everything. However, the one thing that stands in his way is me. He then continued, I am working on a bridge that connects the land of the waves with the outside world, and Gato sees that as a threat to his control. Sakura then interrupted and said, so he used his hired ninja to try get rid of you and put an end to the construction of the bridge. Is that it? Tazuna nodded and said, there you have it. Sakura said, but that still doesn't explain why you couldn't afford to pay for the mission. Tazuna replied, we are a small nation and a poor one. Whatever money we earned, Gato forked it out of us barely, leaving us to provide for ourselves to eat. Naruto understood. He thought, from what he's saying, Gato is overpricing them on the essentials to cough out money, essentially bleeding them out without leaving them enough to even provide for food. In such a situation, I guess providing for a B-rank mission is a no-go. Kakashi said, while I understand your situation, we still couldn't do T-dash. Naruto interrupted, it's fine, sensei. We will do this mission. Kakashi looked at Naruto with a weird eye, and so did his two other teammates. Naruto replied, it wouldn't do good to the public image of Konoha if we rejected the job once we accepted it. Besides, while he can't pay us now, he can still make a payment plan later on or do something of equivalent value or something like that, right? Sakura, who heard that, thought, whoa, when did Naruto get so smart? Sasuke just looked on with contempt and without interest, but internally, he was wondering the same thing as Sakura. Are you sure? For now, we faced a Chunin. Next time it won't be the same. They will hire a Jounin. This may become dangerous, asked Kakashi while stressing on the point dangerous. Naruto nodded his head. Kakashi sighed and thought to the time when he battled Naruto. Flashback. Well then, shall we have this dance, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Naruto. Kakashi, internally excited, took out his kunai and stood on guard. Naruto did the same. Each of them were analyzing the other for weaknesses. Kakashi saw Naruto's stance and thought, well, the kid is leaving out a lot of obvious openings, but I know for sure now that he's baiting me to take them. Kakashi didn't wait and then said, well then, Naruto, come at me with everything you got. Naruto gave a grin to Kakashi and then went on to attack him from the front with kunai in hand. Kakashi merely dodged his attack by moving backwards, but Naruto made a relentless attack at him. He was then forced to block Naruto's strikes. Kakashi then gave a kick at Naruto by creating an opening, throwing Naruto backwards. He then said, is that all you got after the talk you just gave me? Come on, show me what you got, kid. Naruto grit his teeth and then said, you asked for it. He then performed a cross-hand seal and said, multi-shadow clone jutsu. Immediately 5 clone poofed into existence. Each of them took a position to surround Kakashi. Kakashi just waited there for an attack. Once the clones surrounded them, they all performed a bunch of hand seals. Water style, water jet stream. Like the jutsu, a jet of water then attacked Kakashi from all sides. However, Kakashi just dodged them by jumping into the air, but he was taken by surprise from a Naruto, who then said, wind style, great breakthrough. A gust of wind then pushed Kakashi, who was then thrown at a distance, only to find himself to be once again hit by a kick from Naruto clone, who jumped at him. However, Kakashi immediately caught that Naruto clone and threw him at one of the other clones, which popped them both. Kakashi regained his footing, but was then got into a frenzy of continuous punches from Naruto and one another clone. He thought, I guess I shouldn't hold back either. He then countered the punches from both clones and then caught their arms. He rotated his body before throwing away each of the clones at random directions, popping them, leaving only Naruto and one last clone. Kakashi immediately took some distance and said, I'm impressed, Naruto. I am not going to hold back anymore. Let's see what you've got. Kakashi then removed his mask, revealing both his eyes. One of them was normal, while the other was red with 3 tomo in a pinwheel-like pattern. Sharingan, thought Kakashi. Naruto thought, alright, this is it. Let's see what I can do against a real Jounin. A few minutes later, An exhausted Naruto was laying on the ground along with a standing Kakashi who was not doing so good himself. Kakashi said, "That was a great show, Naruto, but you still have a lot to improve upon." Ha-iche, panted Naruto without responding to Kakashi. He then raised his hands and looked at them while thinking. I see. It seems I am still not at the level to beat Kakashi without going all out. Kakashi then sat down beside Naruto, who then woke up from laying on the ground. He then passed some water to Naruto, who accepted it and drank heartily. Naruto asked, "So how did I do?" Kakashi said, "You have a good grasp on both ninjutsu and taijutsu. You use an overall blitzkrieg strategy by targeting your opponent's weakness to deliver the finishing blow swiftly. Your reflexes are good enough for a jounin, and you have good battle awareness. If it was me, I would have already placed you at the level of an experienced chunin. However, you still need to work on some of your taijutsu and need to find a way to efficiently use your chakra. You used way too much chakra on your techniques, unnecessarily overpowering them." Naruto nodded his head. They were silent for a while before Kakashi said, "I want to ask you something, Naruto. How long do you think you can keep this secret of yours from Sasuke and Sakura?" Naruto was silent. He didn't understand where the conversation was going and just kept silent. Kakashi then said, "In the beginning, we will only be doing D and C ranks together. We won't face any shinobi in those, but if it becomes dangerous, you may need to reveal your cards." Naruto remained silent while thinking on what the white-haired jounin said. Naruto then replied, "We'll cross that bridge when the time comes, sensei." Kakashi nodded his head. "For your sake, I hope we don't encounter any tough situations in the future." "Don't jinx it, sensei," said Naruto in an accusing tone. Kakashi said, "It's all right, Naruto. Just because I said it doesn't mean it will happen." Back to present. "Fuck, I had to say it, didn't I?" thought Kakashi while cursing under his breath. He then looked towards the squad and found that Naruto still had the eager look. He also found that Sasuke was also eager to continue while Sakura was conflicted. Kakashi sighed and said, "All right, we'll see to that Tazuna is protected." The squad cheered while Tazuna sighed a breath of relief. The team then moved forward and crossed the sea to reach the land of waves silently, with the dense fog covering their movements. They then started traveling to Tazuna's house. While moving, Naruto then noticed something. He thought, "Something's wrong. The forest is too silent." He then looked at Kakashi and found him to be on alert too. Naruto then noticed a movement in the bushes. "There," thought Naruto. He then threw a kunai over there, quickly garnering the attention of their teammates. He went forward to find that what he had hit was just a rabbit. He sighed. "Just a rabbit." Sakura came forward and shouted, "Now why did you do that, idiot? You just killed a poor rabbit." However, Naruto wasn't paying attention to Sakura. He looked closely at the rabbit and thought, "Wait a second, white fur. In the middle of summer? No, this one is homegrown." Kakashi arrived at the same conclusion. Both heard a whirling sound in the distance and instantaneously shouted, "Get down." Kakashi grabbed Sasuke and Sakura while Naruto did so with Tazuna, and all of them ducked, dodging an incoming blade whirling toward them. The huge blade went and struck a tree. A figure appeared on the handle of the said blade. Kakashi said, "Well, well, if it isn't Zabuza Momochi." The man named Zabuza said, "Kakashi Hitaki of Konohagakure." Sasuke moved forward to attack Zabuza, but Kakashi stopped him and said, "You can't face him. He's not like those other ninja. He's on a whole other league." He then added, "It seems I might need to use this." Kakashi then revealed his Sharingan by removing part of his mask. Sasuke, who saw Kakashi, looked at him, surprise evident in his eyes. Zabuza then said, "It seems I get to see the Sharingan in action. This is an honor. Though I have to ask you to hand over the old man to me, Kakashi." Naruto and the others went to protect the old man quickly as he said that by standing in guard in front of him. Kakashi then said, "I think I would have to refuse, Zabuza." Zabuza then said, "Too bad. I suppose I have to kill you now." He then took out his blade from the tree and disappeared. Naruto then shouted, "There, the water." They all saw Zabuza standing on the water while having his hand up in a hand seal. Zabuza then said, "Ninja art, Hidden Mist Jutsu. Dense mist soon started enveloping the place, reducing the squad's line of sight. Kakashi then said, I want all of you to be on high alert. The enemy we are facing right now is a highly trained assassin from Kirigakure and a master of the silent killing technique. He is also one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of Kirigakure. Zabuza Momochi, Kirigakure no Kijin. The team was officially scared, and Sakura made a gulping noise about the danger they were facing. While Naruto was externally tense, internally, he was thinking, good. If we could get some distance, I might be able to fight freely along with Kakashi-sensei, without these two interrupting us. They then heard Zabuza say, 8 points. Sakura gasped and said, what's that? Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Now, which should be my kill point? Kakashi then noticed the intense killing intent that Zabuza made on the team minus Naruto, who has already faced such things before. Kakashi quickly dispersed some of the mist using some chakra and then said, it's all right, team. I won't allow my comrades to die. Trust me. Sasuke and Sakura relaxed while Naruto remained on guard. Kakashi then noticed Zabuza coming at him from the front using his Sharingan. He quickly evaded the attack by quickly bending his body and then striked forward and stabbed Zabuza with a kunai. However, it turned out to be a water clone. The real Zabuza made his way from the side and attacked Kakashi and swung the executioner's blade on him. Kakashi was cut into 2, but it turned out to be a substitution. Naruto then saw Kakashi attack Zabuza from behind. Zabuza blocked the strike with his executioner's blade. He then delivered a flurry of attacks to Kakashi, who dodged those attacks. Zabuza made some distance and immediately went into hiding again and then said while chuckling, it seems it would be difficult for you to attack me and protect your team at the same time, wouldn't it? Kakashi went on instant alert and then saw that Zabuza already went past him and reached behind the bridge builder. Damn, I won't make it. However, Naruto took the right moment to act and immediately tackled Tazuna to the side. He then made a cross-hand seal and said, Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. 21 clones were summoned. Naruto then signaled, all right now. There was huge cloud of smoke as the clones then each turned into a trio of Tazuna, Sakura, and Sasuke with perfect transformation, and each of them took the same role as the ones they disguised as. Zabuza thought, smart kid. He made the clones as cover while the real ones are protected within them. He then frowned. This is going to be harder than I thought. Kakashi then attacked Zabuza from his behind and stabbed him. However, the stabbed Zabuza released water instead of blood. A water clone, thought Kakashi and turned back, but it was too late as another Zabuza appeared from behind and cleaved him in half. Zabuza then noticed, a water clone just like mine. When did he dash? Kakashi appeared behind Zabuza with a kunai at his neck. Surprised, eh? Zabuza? Zabuza chuckled and then said, you're impressive, copying my water clone jutsu. However, you're just that, a copycat, and I am not about to lose to one. Naruto shouted, that one's a clone too. The real Zabuza surprised Kakashi by appearing from the side, intending to cleave him. However, Kakashi was able to evade the attack. Zabuza then stuck his sword to the ground and used it to propel himself to kick Kakashi, throwing him into the river. Zabuza then ran towards the river with the blade on hand, avoiding the traps set by Kakashi, who was sent flying by the kick. He then appeared on the water and performed a bunch of hand seals. Zabuza said, water style, water prison jutsu. Zabuza was able to capture Kakashi, who emerged from the river in a water ball. Naruto, who saw that, thought, shit, Sensei was captured in the water ball technique. We have 4-5 minutes tops before he drowns himself. Kakashi shouted from the water prison, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, I want you guys to take Tazuna-san and run. You are no match for him. Naruto knew that Kakashi spoke true, as even with Naruto's skills, he couldn't beat Zabuza without unleashing all of his techniques. Naruto thought, damn, I may need to go all out if I need to save Kakashi-sensei. Damn it, what do I do? Sasuke readied himself for battle, while Sakura stood like an afraid little lamb in front of Tazuna, who she was supposed to be protecting. Zabuza said, run? Ha ha ha, you must be joking, Kakashi. as if these little brats could run away from me. Naruto then said, "Oh yeah." Kakashi said, "Naruto." Naruto then replied, "Enough, Kakashi. Isn't this what you taught us? Teamwork. What was that you always said in our sessions? Those who abandon their mission are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum? If so, then are you saying that we are to be something worse than scum? Sorry, but I am not doing that." Sakura thought, "He's right." Kakashi said, "But this situation is not so different than the ones you told about. A shinobi's true character is put to test in the face of adversity," replied Naruto by interrupting Kakashi. Zabuza laughed and said, "Pretty big words, kid. But are you ready to back it up?" Zabuza then created some water clones while keeping Kakashi on hold. Meanwhile, Sasuke and Sakura, who heard Naruto's words, were able to strengthen their resolve. With boosted morale, they became more confident and more challenging to the task in front of them. Naruto replied, "Oh, I am. I may not be all that smart, but I know that jutsu you're using very well. Even though you have trapped Kakashi-sensei in a water prison, you can't move yourselves or your right hand." Naruto thought, 2 minutes has passed. We need to move fast. The clones will buy us some time. Naruto then added, "Besides, your clones will have a tough time finding out who's the real target." Zabuza frowned, but then said while chuckling, "Well, look here, Kakashi. Your student is a bit too confident of himself." Kakashi didn't say anything. He thought, "I already said too much. I need to conserve some oxygen so that I can survive a little longer. Whatever it is you're planning, Naruto, you better do it fast. Sensei doesn't have a lot of time here." Naruto then shouted, "Sasuke, I have a plan, and I am going to need some help." Sasuke looked at the determined face that Naruto had, and then said, "What do you need me to do?" Naruto replied, "On my signal, I want you to perform your fireball jutsu." Sasuke nodded his head. Naruto then said, "Sakura, wherever you are, get to cover with the clones. Don't let Zabuza near you." Naruto then looked at Sasuke and said, "We go in together." Sasuke nodded, and the pair of blonde and black moved towards the clones. Though the clones were a poor imitation of the real thing, they still had some skill of the original. Naruto, however, was still able to handle one of the clones by himself, though Sasuke had a tough time. Naruto then performed a cross-hand seal and said, "Shadow Clone Jutsu." A clone of Naruto popped up and then started to assist Sasuke in fighting the water clone. Zabuza frowned and said, "TCH, troublesome brat." He then made a couple of other water clones. Naruto dodged the incoming attacks of the water clones. He then threw a smoke bomb. The smoke bomb covered the area immediately along with the water clones. Naruto was able to make his way through the pair of clones, and he then attacked Zabuza head-on. Zabuza used his free left hand to wield the executioner's blade. Naruto then said, "Now Sasuke." Zabuza felt a surge of chakra from his side, and then saw Sasuke in the water on his left, who weaved the hand seals and shout, "Fire style, fireball jutsu." Zabuza thought, when did he dash? His line of sight was then towards the land, and then it clicked as he saw the clone still standing. I see. He used the smoke as cover and threw his team made into the water using the clone. But that line of thought was cut off as a huge fireball made its way through towards the pair of shinobi. Zabuza thought, are they planning to kill their sensei along with me? However, in his momentary distraction, Naruto was able to grab hold of Zabuza's arms and used it to deliver a roundhouse kick to his waist, sending the shinobi flying off towards the fireball. Naruto then ducked along with Kakashi into the water to avoid the said fireball. Zabuza, who was flying towards the fireball jutsu, weaved a bunch of hand seals and shouted, "Water style, water wall." An intense steam explosion happened as it threw off Zabuza backwards as fire met water. Zabuza regained his balance mid-air and landed on the water nearby, while Kakashi and Naruto emerged from the water and stood on it. Zabuza then said, "Well done freeing Kakashi, brat. You did a good job distracting me with that fireball jutsu, enough to buy you time to attack me head-on." Kakashi snorted, "Don't flatter yourself, Zabuza. Even if Naruto didn't make a move, you would have been forced to leave from Sasuke's incoming fireball." Zabuza snorted. Kakashi then added, This battle has gone on for long enough, Zabuza. What say we end this? Zabuza said, "In this? Haha, I like the sound of that." Zabuza then formed a bunch of different hand signs for a while and was soon joined by Kakashi. Once the series of hand signs were over, both shinobi shouted, "Water style, water dragon jutsu." Two dragons emerged as the fight between them raged on in an epic clash of water style against water style. Zabuza soon pulled off a giant vortex jutsu, but the hand signs for the jutsu were completed by Kakashi way before Zabuza did his own, hitting Zabuza with a giant water vortex, incapacitating him. Naruto thought, "It's finally over." The squad went towards the downed Zabuza to finish the kill. Kakashi went forward and asked, "Well, Zabuza, any last words?" Zabuza said, "Yeah, why don't you go food dash?" However, his last words were cut short when a pair of needles hit him in the neck. Naruto thought, "Senbon needles?" A new face then appeared beside Zabuza. Naruto recognized the new face to be one of the hunter ninja of the hidden mist and assumed that she must be here for the body. Sakura, however, wasn't aware about this and asked, "Wait, who is that?" Kakashi replied, "A hunter ninja. They are ninja hired by each village to take care of its rogue shinobi so that the secrets of their village are not passed on to others." The masked ninja nodded her head and said, "I thank you for taking care of this one. I have been hunting him for a while now. I am sorry, but you can't have the bounty on this one. Once again, thank you for your assistance." The masked hunter ninja didn't wait for a response and disappeared via Shunshin. Naruto then thought, "I guess we can rest a bit for a while." He then saw Kakashi collapse to the ground. Sakura shouted, "Kakashi-sensei." Naruto went forward toward Kakashi with haste and looked at him. He knew that it must be due to the exhaustion as he could still feel Kakashi's steady breathing. Naruto said, "He's fine, Sakura, just exhausted from the fight." Naruto then looked at Tazuna and said, "I think we go to your place soon, Tazuna-san. I reckon all of us need some well-required rest now." Tazuna nodded his head and said, "All right, we aren't far off now. This way." They all then moved towards the direction Tazuna led them. Naruto thought, "It's finally over, but why do I get the feeling it's not?" Little did he know that his hunch was right. It was far from being over.